Athletic Association talking about strides they're taking to make the Boston Marathon more sustainable. Then we'll open the lines to get your thoughts on superfood powders. Are these ground up greens a marketing scam or the next best wellness trend? It's all ahead on Boston Public Radio.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. President Trump says any country supplying military weapons to Iran will face a 10% U.S. tariff. The announcement comes after Trump agreed to a 2-week ceasefire with Iran. The two countries are trying to negotiate an end to the war. NPR's Deepa Shivaram has more.
Trump says many of the 15 points in the U.S. plan for Iran have been agreed to, including no enrichment of uranium in Iran. But Iran says otherwise and previously put forth its own 10-point proposal. In his initial social media post on the short-term ceasefire, Trump said Iran's plan is a workable basis on which to negotiate. In a post since then, he also writes that the U.S. and Iran will discuss sanctions and tariff relief. Pakistan helped facilitate the 2-week ceasefire between the U.S. and Iran and invited both parties to Islamabad later this week to finalize negotiations. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said there are ongoing discussions about the talks, but nothing has been finalized. Deepa Shivaram, NPR News.
Meanwhile, Israel says it's observing the truce with Iran, but says it does not apply to Hezbollah militants in Lebanon. Israel's military said today it carried out airstrikes on more than 100 targets in Lebanon in about 10 minutes. NPR's Lauren Freyer is in Beirut.
Lebanon's health minister says hundreds are dead and injured. The Red Cross says 100 ambulances are out in Beirut alone trying to rescue people. Hospitals are asking for blood donations. Israel issued fresh evacuation orders for areas in Beirut's southern suburbs this morning, but not for areas in central Beirut, where I am. A posh area along Beirut's Corniche waterfront was struck today, which has not been a target before. That blast hit near the residence of the Speaker of Lebanon's Parliament.
NPR's Lauren Freyer reporting from Beirut. Hezbollah militants in Lebanon have threatened to retaliate against Israel. A new survey out today finds that U.S. democracy has significantly eroded since President Trump returned to office. As NPR's Frank Langfitt reports, that assessment generally matches 3 other recent surveys.
The Economist Intelligence Unit says the United States fell 6 spots last year in its Global Democracy Index. The U.S. tied with Poland for 34th out of 167 countries. Constance Hunter with Economist Enterprise cites a range of actions, from Trump's lawsuits against news organizations to his deployments of the National Guard. She says the survey has a message.
Fight for your civil liberties, for the functioning of government, and for this amazing thing we have of democracy. It's the 250th anniversary of our independence.
The White House has rejected surveys that accuse the president of damaging democracy, and Trump has repeatedly denied he tries to rule as an autocrat. Frank Langfitt, NPR News, Washington.
On Wall Street, the Dow is up more than 1,100 points. This is NPR.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. The Massachusetts House votes today to ban social media for children under 14 and implement statewide restrictions on cell phones in schools. GBH's Diana Dame has more on what would be among the most restrictive regulations in the country.
The bill would require social media platforms to block users under the age of 14 entirely. Social media platforms would also need to verify the ages of 14 and 15-year-olds who could use them with parental consent. The proposed bill also has a ban on the use of personal electronic devices in school. House Speaker Ron Mariano says the bans would help protect young people from harmful content and addictive algorithms that can negatively affect their mental health. If passed, the bans would take effect October 1st. Diana Dame, GBH News.
UMass Chan Medical School will soon be led by one of its own, a nationally recognized cardiologist, researcher, and longtime faculty member at UMass Chan and UMass Memorial Health has been named the next chancellor of the Worcester-based medical school. University officials announced yesterday that Dr. David McManus will be the first alumnus to lead the institution. McManus earned his medical degree from UMass Chan in 2002, a master's degree in clinical investigation from the school in 2012, and he also recently earned an executive MBA in MIT's Sloan School of Management in 2025. He succeeds Dr. Michael Collins, who announced last June that he would step down in June of this year after nearly 2 decades as chancellor. 39 degrees in Boston. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include EBSCO, supporting open source technology and making open platforms possible for libraries of all sizes. Learn more at ebsco.com. And listeners like you who donate to this NPR station.
You're listening to BPR and GBH and NEPM, Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News, and we are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library. A couple of programming notes. Very excited about this. Tomorrow, we're going to be joined in Brighton, not here, but it's going to be in studio by former Secretary of State and Massachusetts Senator John Kerry, who led the negotiations back in 2015 for the Iran nuclear deal. That was the one, of course, that President Trump tore up at the beginning of his administration. And then on Friday, we're going to be joined at the Boston Public Library with the Handel and Haydn Society for Live Music Friday, plus a conversation with a Cuban journalist and others involved in the humanitarian crisis there since they've been so short of oil. Good morning, Jim.
Hey there, Marjorie. Obviously, we're going to start with a whirlwind past 24 hours. Trump threatens a war crime to wipe out a civilization. Then, of course, he backs off, announces a 2-week ceasefire. While we want to acknowledge the moment of collective relief, the uncertainty is palpable. One thing that is certain out of this is the United States has lost whatever moral leadership it once had in the world. So the time is yours to reflect and react. 877-301-8970 and call or text. Israel has made it clear it will continue its campaign in Lebanon, even though the negotiators, the people from Pakistan, said part of the deal was that they would not. We shall see. There have been sporadic reports of attacks on Gulf states this morning from Iran. How are you bracing for the next couple of weeks? What did you feel last night at about 6:30 when you heard that a deal had been cut? Give us a call. The number is 877-301-8970. So what we do know, Marjorie, it seems we lost billions of dollars, Americans have. More than a dozen lives was lost. Moral leadership, as I mentioned. And this is the part, when I first heard this last night on television, I assumed that the person had misspoken. But then I thought about it for a second, and everybody was saying it. So before the war, did Iran control the Strait of Hormuz?
No, it did not.
Who controls the Strait of Hormuz now?
Iran and its military forces.
I mean, it is absolutely laughable were it not so incredibly painful, and allegedly their military is going to allow free passage, whatever that means, for the next couple of weeks. But the United States, by agreeing to this ceasefire, because I think you have a desperate president who wanted out at any cost, has at least temporarily given over control of this critical chokehold, as they say, to Iran.
Well, I think that there's a lot we don't know about how this next 2 weeks is going to unfold. But, you know, it does make you kind of sad as an American that for years, as so many people have said, we were known as the benign superpower. You know, not that we were perfect, not that we hadn't made a lot of mistakes and done a lot of things wrong, but we were viewed as basically a good superpower, unlike, you know, Russia or China that does horrible things to their citizenry, and that's all done now, which is kind of a very sad thing. And on another note, Jim, the president has been striving to get the Nobel Peace Prize
this should help,
for quite some time now. So I'm wondering if whether we're threatening to blow up an entire civilization will disqualify him, or whether he's still going to pursue getting the Nobel Peace Prize. Because we know Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, watching him this morning, I almost couldn't stand it. It was so upsetting. But he did praise the president for being a president of peace. And even though it drove me through the roof, we'll play a little sound of Pete Hegseth, the secretary, as he likes to calls himself, of war. Here he is.
And at the end, he chose to say, you know what, I'd rather talk to you at the table than obliterate your capability to export oil and fund your terror regime. So he did make that choice. That was his choice. He was a president of peace. And he's been willing to make those really tough calls that the American people elected him to do.
No, I say most people who voted for Trump said, I really hope he wipes out a civilization during his second term. The number's 877-301-8970. Every time something like this happens, like with John King yesterday, I ask what Republicans have spoken out to the credit of a guy who was almost glued at the hip to Donald Trump, very conservative Republican senator from Wisconsin, Ron Johnson. I do not want to see us start blowing up civilian infrastructure. I do not want to see that. We're not at war with the Iranian people. We're trying to liberate them. And by the way, you shouldn't get commended for essentially saying you're against the war crimes being committed by your country. But, you know, the notion that there's such little self-awareness. This whole thing started with, we're going to attack them, the people are going to rise up, they're going to take over their government, they're going to control their government. Two, we're going to obliterate, the civilization is going to die, meaning the end of its 93 million people too. It is just, we are led by fools and savages. I mean, it is unbelievable. And what do you think, Delici? We're going to talk to an expert, Dan Drezner from Tufts, who actually knows foreign policy. We're just opining, as they say. What do you think they accomplish in the next 2 weeks?
I think the president and Hegseth just going to keep lying. They're going to keep saying this is a new regime. It's not a new regime. They're going to say and obviously their capabilities militarily have been severely impacted. We know that, the Navy and the missiles and stuff, but it doesn't mean that they're not, especially if they charge tolls for people to go through the strait, which is what they're talking about, was $2 million a ship or something like that.
They have transponders on those boats, by the way, just like we do. You go through,
right.
They just bill you at the end of the month.
They could enable that could enable the Iranians to build up their missiles quickly again. So, what do you ask me? What have we left?
What do you think is going to happen in the next 2 weeks?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I think the big thing is what is going to happen at the strait if the military forces for Iran are in charge. Are they going to let through certain ships and not let through other ships? Are they going to charge them millions of dollars? Are they going to? The president says that the Iranians and the Americans are going to get together and dig up the enriched uranium. That sounds kind of wild to me, but that's still a problem too. They still have the enriched uranium, and as many foreign policy experts, we're going to talk to Daniel Denzer in a few minutes, think that this has emboldened the Iranians because they think a nuclear arsenal is the only thing that's going to keep them safe down the road from these kind of attacks.
He's going to send over Rubio with a wheelbarrow. 877-301-8970. What do you make of the deal? What do you make of the state of this war? What hopes, if any, do you have that there'll be an end to this thing negotiated or at least declared during the next 2 weeks? 877-301-8970. Jenny in Cambridge. Hey, Jenny.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah.
You can, perfectly. Welcome.
Hi, guys. So in addition to echoing the absolute horror and terror that we were possibly at the brink of nuclear invasion and obliterating a population of people just like us who are hostage to a religiously zealous dictator.
Good point.
The one silver lining that I have is that at least 25 members of Congress, the representatives, called for the 25th Amendment. And if we can just get the senators back from recess, I'm hoping that this is finally a turning point where we can take motions not to just impeach. The dude's been impeached twice already and then convicted 34 times, and it's made no difference, but removed from office.
I think, by the way, Jenny, to make you feel better, I think I woke up to the notion that there were actually 50 Democrats. I could be wrong.
Now the NAACP.
Who'd signed that for the first time in its history. Yeah. The NAACP has called for the invocation of the 25th Amendment, which again would allow, at the initiation, I believe, of the vice president and members of the cabinet and some other system, to remove a president who cannot carry out the duties of the office. And it's pretty clear this guy cannot. Jenny, I hope you're right. I hope they're on to something. Thanks.
This is a good point to mention. The pictures we saw of children, some of them very small children, with these big, huge Iranian flags going out to offer themselves up as human shields. Yeah, on bridges and places that we talked about, obliterating bridges and energy facilities, and they were out there.
Did you read the New York Times, the excerpt from the book by Maggie Haberman and Jonathan Swan in the New York Times yesterday? I read the piece that was in the Times yesterday. One of the interesting. We'll talk to Drezner about this too in 15 or 20 minutes. The most interesting thing for me, though somewhat surprising, is virtually everybody around Trump in private settings sycophantically went along with this. The one exception was Vance, who apparently in very outspoken fashion, this is not to commend him, it's just to reflect the reality, said this is a huge mistake. He forecast the problems with the strait, that there wouldn't be regime change, but said at the end, and they quote him, I'm against this, but if you decide to go ahead with it anyway, this is to Trump he's speaking, I will support it, and obviously he did. 877-301-8870. We're getting your reaction to the last 24 hours and the next 2 weeks. Molly in West Newbury, hi.
Yes, I'm really concerned of retribution from all of the Middle Eastern countries and the fear of what we're threatening that could go to any or all of them. And why would they not attack us as protection against this monster? And the one caller that called yesterday about a religious zealot running a country is correct. It is. He's not a religious zealot, but he's going in the name of religion to attack countries and just obliterate.
His number one guy on this is clearly a religious zealot. Pete Hegseth has been talking about how this is being done in the name of Jesus, and then compared as the surviving airman who was incredibly brave to Jesus
to the
rising,
resurrection,
captured, shot down on a Friday, on Good Friday, and rises up, or whatever he said on that Sunday. Molly, thanks for your call. We appreciate it.
David Sanger was reporting in the New York Times this morning. This has been kind of a shock to the allies in the Gulf, because in Dubai and all these very wealthy countries, they built these huge skyscrapers, and Kuwait has been livable, but now they realize that they are within, that they could be subject to another war there, because of course Iran has hit them over and over and over again.
So who do they blame? I don't know the answer that we're going to ask Stan Drezner. Who do they blame, the United States or Iran? I mean, obviously Iran are the one who are directing the weapons at them, but it would not have happened.
I think they're with Israel. They want us to keep going in this war until there's absolutely nothing. Well, I shouldn't say it still has nothing left, but they were some of the people that were urging us to continue, because this has kind of ruined their kind of image as a safe place to live, right? I mean, a lot of people go visit Dubai and they look at those huge, spectacular buildings and the huge, spectacular infrastructure, and they think it's great.
You know, by the way, the other thing I should have mentioned from this excerpt in the New York Times from the Haberman and Jonathan Swan book is that the decision to go ahead with this was a function of Netanyahu in the Situation Room leading Trump around by the nose.
I know.
And showing a video. This is a good, talk about good reporting, spectacular reporting. He brought a video along to of people who he thought would be good next leaders once there was regime change, once the people had risen up. So do you think Trump is savvy enough, smart enough, whatever, to realize that he was sold a bill of goods by Netanyahu, or no?
I don't know. I think he's not someone that is familiar with history, that looks at our history. I don't think he thinks he's got these instincts that lead him, doesn't listen to other people. He's got this weird kind of surety about him, which I just don't know why, as I said, why we did this, and we're kind of in a mess.
Can I ask you? I know this is the tiredest of questions with the most predictable answer. If any Democratic president had stood up and said a civilization is going to die tonight, I hope it's not going to happen, but it probably will. What would have happened?
If anybody in the United States of America got up and said that, I mean, it's just crazy talk. We're going to wipe out an entire civilization. And by the way, here's what the New York Times is reporting again about this is David Sanger again about the Iranian situation. If Trump fails to get the 970 pounds of 60% enriched uranium out of the country and the larger quantities of lower enriched nuclear fuel, he will have accomplished less in the billion-a-day war than Barack Obama accomplished 11 years ago in the original agreement with Iran that we're going to talk to Senator Kerry and Secretary Kerry about tomorrow. I mean, Trump ripped that up the first couple of days he was in office.
Why did he rip it up, Marjorie?
I think because he can't stand Barack Obama, and he wanted to say he could do a better deal, just like he wanted to rip up Obamacare, saying he could do a better deal, and we're all waiting for that better deal. Kathy and Lynn, thank you for calling.
Hello, Kathy.
Hi, guys. I listen to you every day.
Thanks.
And I'm a 78-year-old who thinks that it's high time that we stop listening to the politicians who do nothing, and we all get in our cars, our trucks, our motorcycles, our bicycles, and head towards Washington and park outside the White House and demand that everybody in there get heard.
Hey, Kathy, if you listen every day, did you bang a pot or a pan outside your window last night at 8 o'clock, as one of the callers brilliantly suggested? How about that? Did you do it?
Because I live in a senior citizen building, I can't do that.
I got it. Okay, fine.
Yeah, our buddy Derek heard it in his apartment building.
Much more effective.
We got it.
We need to actually go to Washington and demand his removal, and Stephen Miller.
Got it. Well, Stephen Miller should probably be first. Kathy, thank you very much for the call.
Well, it was pretty. We did have those pretty big rallies all across the country.
Biggest collective rally
ever.
In American history, I'd say.
Maybe Kathy's right. Maybe it'd be more effective if we were right there and right across the street from the White House.
What were you talking about this morning? Speaking of when yesterday we were talking about how come there's not a spontaneous reaction to this during the day yesterday. What happened? You were talking about something at Harvard?
Oh, at Harvard, yeah. We had talked last week about why there weren't more colleges rising up and protesting this thing. And yesterday, as we're waiting to find out whether or not he is going to blow up an entire civilization, there was a silent protest at Harvard protesting the fact that Muslim students from Palestine, and students from the Middle East think that they have been discriminated against by Harvard, that there are some 500 complaints that they've made about discrimination there that have been ignored, and that it seemed to me to answer one of the questions about why there haven't been more protests about this situation is because now students feel like they're going to be deported, or they're going to be expelled, or they're going to be otherwise punished. Now, I'm sure Harvard has an explanation for this, but Trump, of course, has been accusing them of anti-Semitism at Harvard. Meanwhile, the same report that looked at anti-Semitism found there was equal attacks on accused the College of Islamophobia as well, and that's what the students were protesting about.
By the way, Anonymous Texter makes a point, since we were saying that Vance, according to the New York Times reporting, stood up at least temporarily to Trump on this idea. As bad as Trump's follies are, don't lose sight, we mentioned this yesterday, of Vance going to Hungary to prop up Putin's wingman. There's an election in which Viktor Orban, who is Putin's wingman and one of Trump's favorite strongmen, is losing. And Vance goes yesterday, I think we talked to you about it live when it was happening, and takes a phone call or makes a phone call to Trump in the hopes that this autocrat is reelected there. Kirsten and Natick, hi.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for taking my call.
Of course.
I want to say that I did cry at the last rally in Boston because so much is going on, and it feels like so little that the common person can do. I like Kathy's idea of riding down to D.C. and making the statement right there in front of President Trump. I think he's a bully and a fearmonger. I know this is sort of a refrain amongst many of us, but I also want to say that I remember in his first term reading an editorial of someone writing that there can be no democracy without morality. And I think, was it David Brink or somebody who wrote a really great article in the New York Times and the Atlantic Monthly on exactly that topic.
Well, I couldn't agree with that. I didn't read it, but I think that is totally true, and that means, I guess, by that definition, we don't have a democracy. Kirsten, thank you much for the phone call. You know, the idea of everybody getting in their cars or bikes or whatever isn't going to Washington. Before we do that, how about the people who are in Washington? What are the Democrats? I mean, what is the action? Apparently, there's somewhere from 25 to 50 who say the 25th Amendment should be invoked to remove Trump. What else are they doing?
I don't know, but the Democrats are going to think a lot about more their messaging. I saw Hakeem Jeffries on television last night.
Oh, and Anderson Cooper?
It was just, this is a war of choice, war of choice, war of choice. It was like he had talking points. He just repeated them. They need people that are going to be able to, I mean, Donald Trump is a charismatic guy. I mean, there's no way around it. People stop and listen to him, although it's very hard to listen to him these days. But they have to think about that. I don't think that Hakeem Jeffries or Chuck Schumer are going to lead the way.
Well, you know who I think some of the most effective Democrats are in their response are people who've actually served in the military.
You know who's good?
From Kelly to Moulton
to Auchincloss
to Jason Crow from Colorado.
Yep.
I mean, they bring a level of expertise and gravitas that Mr. Bonespur does not bring to this thing, and I think they're really valuable, and I don't think they do follow a script, as you say a minute ago, which I tend to agree with you about.
Ali from Cambridge, you only have about a minute left.
Hi.
Thanks for calling.
Good morning to you. Thank you so much for taking my call.
Sure.
I am an Iranian American. All of my families are living in Iran, from Tehran, Isfahan, and Shiraz. And I have been in close contact with all along, of course, not recently by internet, because internet has been disconnected for 30-something days, but, through the phone and so on. Mm-hmm. So I'm reading the news overseas, listening to you every day, and I'm totally disagree with whatever your assessments. Namely, in the beginning, Jim mentioned that, look, what has happened to Hormuz, and also Iran is controlling. So that's when gives you a sign that this is a bully country and should show it to everybody. But the person...
Hey, Ali, only because your connection is so horrible, if you can get to your bottom line point, I don't mean to be disrespectful. We just can't hear half of what you're saying.
Okay. Do you hear me now?
Yeah, we have about 30 seconds.
Okay, very good. So I was saying that, the thing that the only president of the U.S. that stood against this bully, international bully, that is behind all the problems in the Middle East, from Lebanon to Yemen,
right,
and Afghanistan and Iraq and so on. President Trump has been the only president that has dared to stand against them.
Well, Ali, if I can say two things, and I'm sure we'll do this tomorrow again. I hope you call back because we're just running out of time. One, I would say the nuclear deal that Secretary Kerry will describe tomorrow on our show was standing up to them more effectively. And secondly, the president's obligation, and I probably would say exactly what you're saying, is to do this if there's an imminent threat to his constituency. And there wasn't. No one's denying what the Iranian people are living under, but the question is that America's responsibility? You believe yes, and I respect that. And I would say, sadly, it is not. But please call us again when we have more time, Ali. Thanks.
Coming up after this quick break, we're going to speak with Tufts International Politics Professor Daniel Drezner about the ceasefire between the U.S. and Israel, between the U.S., I should say, among the U.S., Israel, and Iran, and what he thinks is going to happen next. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browder. You listen to BPR GBH, NAPM, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Colleges are rapidly approaching a demographic cliff, with fewer traditional college-age students up for enrollment. Now some schools are rethinking how they recruit and support one growing population, their Latino students.
When I was a college student over 20 years ago now, we didn't have models like this. It was a sink or swim model. You just sort of had to figure it out. We want to take some of that guessing out of the equation.
I'm Kirk Carapezza. You can find the rest of that story online at gbhnews.org.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you and Safety Insurance, offering a variety of home insurance products to cover your home's increased value. You can ask an independent agent about Safety Insurance. Safety Insurance will help you manage life's storms. And Dover Rug and Home, rugs and carpeting for today's lifestyle with in-home rug trial and design consultation. Dover Rug in Natick, Boston, Burlington, and online at doverrug.com. Dover Rug, rugs and the people who know them.
Welcome back to BPR and GBH and NEPM. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Needless to say, we're at the Boston Public Library, and we'll be back here on Friday. Tomorrow in Brighton, we'll be joined in studio, which we're really very excited about, by former Secretary of State John Kerry. Obviously, Secretary Kerry was the leader of the negotiations around the nuclear deal with Iran under his boss then, President Obama, in 2015. We'll talk about that, the war, the future, etc., much of which we're going to do now, too, with someone who actually knows what he's talking about, unlike us, Daniel Drezner, a distinguished professor of international politics and academic dean at the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy at Tufts. Dan, it's good to see you.
Hi, Dan.
Good to see you, too. Hi, Jim. Hi, Marjorie.
So no one is more relieved, obviously, than the Iranian people that they didn't face annihilation last night at the hands of the United States. But what do you think of this deal and this ceasefire? What do you think?
I think I want to see if it actually holds for 2 weeks. Even with the ceasefire as it was announced, I think the Israelis have said, well, we don't think that this covers our attack against Hezbollah. The Pakistanis who brokered the ceasefire says we think it does. We've seen reports from the Persian Gulf countries saying that there have been missile attacks from Iran. Part of the problem with this, of course, is that with the successful decapitation of Iran's top leadership at the outbreak of the war, a lot of the sort of military decisions have probably been, decentralized down to local commanders. And so it'll be interesting to see to the extent to which this sort of ceasefire can actually be enforced by the Iranians on their own military and their own Revolutionary Guard. Another open question is how exactly are ships going to get out of the Strait of Hormuz? In the Iranian statement on this, my understanding is that they and Oman are going to require a $2 million fee for any tanker to get out of there. That's definitely a change in the status quo, and you don't want a strategic situation where you have rewarded Iran by making them the toll booth collector for the Strait of Hormuz. I want to see all the details. It's easy for everyone to think, oh, this means all the 400 tankers that are stuck in the Gulf are going to be able to get out. The devil's in the details on this. I want to see actually how this plays out.
By the way, one of the things you mentioned, just a brief update, as you were speaking, I'm watching CNN at the same time, and they're saying Israel is saying the number of hits on Lebanon that they have initiated is more than any other day since they started. So it's accelerated, not reduced. And as I said earlier, Pakistan, who obviously was in the middle of all this, they believe that part of the deal was that would end too. Obviously, Israel feels differently. Dan Drezner, you mentioned the first thing you want to know is whether this holds. Let's assume for argument's sake it does. What's a realistic expectation of what can be achieved in 2 weeks when I think the deal that, speaking of John Kerry, that was negotiated in 2015, I think it took 1.5 to 2 years to get to closure. What's real?
I honestly don't know what is going to be real in terms of negotiations for this, because in some ways this is a replay of the Russian-Ukrainian war, where the war hasn't ended because both sides have a theory of victory, of how they can triumph. And the same is true to some extent with this war, which is, I think for the United States and Israel, they feel they can win just by continuing to batter Iran's military and apparently their civilian infrastructure, and essentially weaken Iran enough so that they cease to be a regional threat. This is in some ways a sort of regionalization of Benjamin Netanyahu's mowing the grass strategy that he has applied towards Hamas for most of the time he's been in power. For the Iranians, on the other hand, their theory of victory is very simple. The regime just wants to survive. It is telling that despite the fact that the Iranian Navy has pretty much been destroyed, that's the one objective you can say the Trump administration has actually accomplished, they've still been able to regulate passage through the Strait of Hormuz. And even now, shipping companies like Maersk have been sort of cautious about the ceasefire. So if Iran continues to maintain that choke point, and Trump has vacillated wildly on whether or not he wants to change that situation or not, you have a situation where Iran is undeniably weakened, they're undeniably battered and bruised, but the regime isn't in any danger of being overthrown. And a lot of the ways they can make mischief in the region by cheap Shahed drones, they're going to be able to manufacture relatively quickly. So what the Iranians keep asking for is not just a ceasefire, they want a permanent cessation of bombing. It's not obvious to me Israel wants to do that, and it's not obvious to me how the Trump administration can agree to that and nonetheless declare victory.
Well, if I may disagree, and I do this with some hesitation, considering your pedigree and mine, I think Trump is so desperate that he wants out at almost any cost. And here's my inexpert take on this. It's already regime change, even though it isn't. He has already reduced their nuclear capacity, even though they have 1,000 pounds of enriched uranium. The only new goal, because obviously it wasn't the goal at the beginning, you wrote about this, about opening the Strait of Hormuz, that's the only one that objectively can be judged by real people when they see gas prices going up and that sort of thing. So it seems to me, and tell me if I'm wildly naive, that as long as he can cut a deal to keep the strait open in some fashion, he declares absolute and total victory and goes home. Is that naive?
I think the problem with this is that for there to actually be a permanent cessation of hostilities, the Iranians have to agree to it. And it's not obvious that the Iranians will have the incentive to agree to this. They could just say, fine, you want to say, take your troops and go home. We're going to continue to attack Israel, or we're going to continue to attack facilities in the Gulf. By the way, as much as we, should condemn the Trump administration's, declaration of what seemed to be like war crimes in terms of threatening to destroy the Iranian civilization, Iran is doing something similar in terms of their attacks on civilian Gulf infrastructure as well, which unfortunately the Trump administration is using as a pretext for why they can reciprocate. But the real question is will the Iranians agree to stop fighting? Because if they see this as a battle for regime survival, they are not going to go down. They're not going to agree to a temporary ceasefire, or continued temporary ceasefires. They are going to continue to want to fight.
Well, you haven't mentioned yet the enriched uranium that they have, which was one of the reasons. I mean, Pete Hegseth said this morning, we're just going to go in and take it. Trump says that.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, I know. I mean, that, I think, to a lot of Americans is the scariest thing of all, because luckily for us, we're further away from the ballistic missiles. But what about the enriched uranium?
I think what the Trump administration is thinking is that from the June attacks, I don't think there have been any new attacks during this conflict that have altered the situation on the ground. But the uranium is buried deep under a mountain complex, and I have no doubt that U.S. satellites are looking very closely at that mountain. And so I think the Trump position on this now is we don't need to worry about this because we're constantly watching the Iranians. We would know if the Iranians were actually trying to move that stuff, and then they could respond very quickly to that. Whether that's actually true or not, I'm not a military expert, and I don't want to claim that much expertise on this, but it does seem curious that you're launching a war that ostensibly was to, end Iran's nuclear problem once and for all. That was one of the stated goals.
Right.
And the position is, well, nothing in this war has actually changed that fact on the ground.
And the other thing I've read, and you know more than I, is that that they think that most of the uranium is under that is on that Isfahan mountain or whatever it is.
Isfahan, I think, yeah.
But that there's also talk that it's been in anticipation of attacks on Isfahan, that some of it has been moved around to different locations around the country too, which is...
That's possible, and we don't know what we don't know. I mean, this is a real question of whether Israeli intelligence and U.S. intelligence, how well they've kept track of what is going on in terms of that uranium. I don't have overwhelming confidence about this, but to be fair, intelligence about the location of Iran's leadership was actually quite good, as evidenced by the successful decapitation strike that started this war.
So you, a few days ago, talked about this war in Iran as a strategic fiasco. What do you mean?
Oh, Lord, where to begin on this one? Well, at the outset of the war, President Trump, remember he recorded that sort of 2 a.m. message of what the goals were of the war. And it's not clear that they've achieved, of the 5 goals that were listed, one of which was the destruction of Iran's missile industrial complex. The second was the destruction of Iran's navy. The third was the weakening of Iran's connection to its terrorist proxies. The fourth was ensuring that Iran would never have a nuclear weapon. And the fifth was regime change in Iran. They've accomplished the navy. objective. And by the way, despite doing that, Iran has still closed the Strait of Hormuz. None of the other 4 objectives have been accomplished yet, despite 6 weeks of bombing. Now, maybe that'll happen if the war continues, although we've got 2 weeks of a ceasefire. But the intelligence suggests that Iran should be able to rebuild its missile capacity, and particularly its drone capacity, relatively quickly. There is no regime change. There's no change in the situation on the nuclear front. And the Houthis have entered the war on behalf of the Iranians, as has Hezbollah. This doesn't strike me as in any way achieving any of the goals. And this does not even count the sort of second and third order effects of this war, which have been catastrophic for U.S. interests. If you are a Persian Gulf state, in what way are you feeling more secure based on what the U.S. attack did? And as for the rest of the world, they are now dealing with, gas prices, which in, let's say, New Zealand, I think, are now approximately $13 a gallon. You have tremendous boost to energy prices. Gas and other forms of petrol are being rationed all across East Asia. All of our traditional allies were not consulted on this attack. And it is hard for anyone to come away from this thinking that the U.S. looks worse off than it did when it started, because you have basically given Iran carte blanche to try to exercise control over the choke point of the Strait of Hormuz. And Trump has been so, erratic in terms of whether he cares about that or not, that if you're a U.S. ally, to what extent can you count on the U.S. defending you going forward? Indeed, the very fact that the Trump administration has berated Europe for not joining, despite the fact that, again, they weren't consulted in the beginning, and now saying, well, why don't you handle the Strait of Hormuz, which wasn't the problem that they created.
Well, it's just going to open naturally, so we don't have to worry about that. If I can add 2 countries to your list of, you didn't call them losers, but those who lost in this first month of this thing, wouldn't you include Taiwan and Ukraine? I mean, it seems to me that Putin and the leader of China have a hell of a lot easier job to defend either of those actions in the spirit of Donald Trump and Iran. Is that misplaced or no?
There is no denying that both Russia and China can use the pretext of what the U.S. has done with Iran to say, you can't provide any moral condemnation if we, particularly, do more brutal action. Indeed, all the U.S. condemnation of Russia's attacks on Ukraine's energy infrastructure now seem ridiculously hypocritical given threats. Ukraine might come out a little bit better ahead because you are seeing at least a tentative, entente between Ukraine and the Gulf states, because Ukraine does have expertise in terms of guarding against Iranian-made drones due to their experience in the conflict. I would actually also say that another loser on this is going to be Israel, because I'm sure you all saw the New York Times story from yesterday about how the Trump administration decided to go to war. That is a story that has confirmed previous stories talking about Netanyahu's principal role in persuading Trump to get involved with this. That is going to cause a bipartisan backlash in the United States, given the fact that this war is pretty unpopular.
One last thing about the Jonathan Swan, Maggie Haberman book excerpt that you just referenced, and one of the pieces we mentioned is Netanyahu leading Trump around by the nose in the Situation Room, including showing a video of prospective leaders of a regime-changed Iran. Based on your historical knowledge, I know David Axelrod, former advisor to Obama, once said the toughest job in the world is to say no to a president of the United States. When you read about that sycophantic circle where nobody except Vance was willing to say this was a bad idea to Trump's face, and Vance then went on to say, but I'll support you if you do it, is that typical or atypical in terms of what presidents are confront when making a monumental decision like Trump made here?
I think it varies from president to president. First of all, I would say that always beware of Jonathan Swan had Maggie Haberman's stories in terms of who comes out looking good, because it also tells you often who the source is for those stories.
I think they're pretty good reporters, but
they are good reporters, but I have no doubt that J.D. Vance was a source for this story.
That way, that point is a wonderful point, actually. I missed your point.
That's what I'm trying to say.
That's a great point.
But beyond that, there's no denying that some presidents have also, fostered groupthink among their advisors. I mean, think about Lyndon Johnson during the escalation in terms of the Vietnam War. There have been, and for that matter, the George W. Bush administration in the run-up to the invasion of Iraq in 2003. But that said, that's not always true. And that, by the way, was not even true of Trump during his first term. I mean, remember, the whole point of the so-called adults in the room was that folks like John Kelly or James Mattis did not necessarily agree with Trump's instincts on this. What is striking about this administration is that Trump clearly picked his cabinet and his national security team based first and foremost on loyalty. And you can tell that's the case because Pete Hegseth is the Secretary of Defense, despite the fact that he is not even remotely qualified for that job.
On that note, we're in complete agreement on that one. Dan Drezner, as always, we really appreciate your perspective. Thanks so much.
It was interesting this morning how much Hegseth mentioned Trump and how little General Kaine mentioned Trump. I don't know if he mentioned Trump at all, but anyway, thank you very much for being with us today. We were speaking with Daniel.
Kaine is another one who apparently not in the face-to-face thing, but did warn about the consequences.
And the Strait of Hormuz and stuff. We were speaking with Daniel Drezner, Distinguished Professor of International Politics and Academic Dean at the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy. Thank you very much for being with us. Coming up after a quick break, from the suffering of the human world, we're going to travel to New Hampshire. We're going to hear about turtle tunnels, birds and cigarette butts, and a bunch of other fascinating details from the non-human animal world with Sy Montgomery. She's next on Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browder. You're listening to BPR on GBH and NEPM and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Jared Bowen. Coming up on The Culture Show, Regie Gibson. The Poet Laureate of the Commonwealth joins us as part of our ongoing celebration of National Poetry Month. We talk with the poet, performer, and educator about bringing verse off the page and into public life. Plus, Eartha Kitt's life and legacy take the stage. Jade Wheeler joins us to discuss Who is Eartha Mae, her one-woman play about the singer, actor, and activist. That and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on GBH 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Direct Federal Credit Union, a Needham-based financial institution providing loans, saving solutions, and financial wellness resources for members across every stage of life. Learn more by visiting direct.com. Direct Federal, member NCUA. And SNH Construction, committed to building spaces that work and providing professional management to help guide the process. Their podcast, Builder's Notebook, can be heard on all podcast platforms. shconstruction.com.
Welcome back to BPR and GBH and NEPM. Marjorie Egan and Jim Browder, streaming youtube.com/GBH News. As we've said, tomorrow in studio in Brighton, we'll be joined by former Secretary of State John Kerry. Obviously led the negotiations that led to the nuclear deal in 2015 that Donald Trump ripped up a few years later. We'll talk to him about that, the war, the future, and everything else. By the way, we decided we needed a break from the human pain that we talk about almost nonstop, and who better to do that with than naturalist and author Sy Montgomery. Sy's latest book for kids and the young at heart, the wonderful, The True and Lucky Life of a Turtle. Hello, Sy Montgomery. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so glad to talk about animals with you right now.
Yeah, we need to talk about animals, particularly with you, because you mentioned turtles. There may be no one in New Hampshire, New England, or maybe in the country who's picked up more turtles to carry them across the road than you, Sy Montgomery. But now we learned that there are tunnels for turtles to cross the road. Tell us what's going on.
Oh, I am just so happy about this. Actually, New Hampshire is getting its first turtle tunnels. We just got a grant from the National Fish and Wildlife Federation's Ecosystem Restoration Initiative, and we're going to put in 4 tunnels. But we're behind you in Massachusetts. You all already have them. You have, 28 different wildlife passages and 14 of them.
No idea.
Just turtles. And this started, you guys were so far ahead. You started building yours in 2010. But like the turtle, we're slowly catching up. And this is going to be wonderful. not only for turtles, but for a lot of other animals that will use these passages because our roads are so deadly.
How do they know to crawl into the tunnels?
There's an arrow. It says, use the
this way.
Use the tunnel. Don't cross the road.
Yeah,
Audrey, that's such a smart question because in the past, years ago, I worked, as you know, I had the pleasure of working in a pit with 18,000 snakes in the largest aggregation of snakes in the world, which is in Manitoba, Canada.
That's
and
right.
These guys, they get smushed like mad when they crawl out of the pits in which they hibernate and then try to migrate to the marshes where they feed. So people were trying years ago to come up with a way to get the snakes to go into tunnels. And they didn't want to because they're reptiles. They didn't want to go into a dark, cold space. They wanted to be on the nice, warm asphalt. So what they've figured out with these turtle tunnels, and it works for other amphibians as well, is that rather than go into a cold, dark space, which nobody really wants to do, unless maybe you're an octopus, is you need to put grating over it so that light and some heat comes in. And also, you need to kind of funnel the animals into the tunnel, often with a kind of fencing or something. They actually call it like a guidance structure. So very good question. They now know how to build these things. They can't be quickly done. You don't just dig a hole and the animal goes through. But it takes years to plan them, and it takes years to find out, where are these animals getting smushed all the time. And of course, when you're building it, you've got to stop traffic for that to happen. But this is going to save a lot of animals. I was shocked to read that some studies show that 98% of turtles that try to cross a busy highway get killed.
Or run over.
Isn't that how you end? Am I wrong? Isn't that how you ended up with the snapping turtle that we met? Fire chief hit.
He was hit, and he had actually, we could tell from his shell, he'd been hit even before the strike that brought him to Turtle Rescue League and to their turtle hospital, and finally to Antrim Road in Hancock, where Matt lives in the same street where I live.
Do you know
he survived the first one? And
Matt's the brilliant illustrator, by the way,
paralyzed.
for those. I'm sorry, for those that don't know Matt.
I'm sorry to
where
interrupt,
Fire
but
Chief lives.
I just wondered if you knew where the turtle tunnels are in Massachusetts. Are they going across 128 or the Mass Pike or?
Some of them I know where they are. Like I know there's one under Route 2 in Concord.
Oh, okay.
I think there's one in Sudbury. I think there's one in Elliott. But there's 14 of them just for turtles.
So they're under Route 2.
They go under the road, but they go under it and they have to put like a grading structure over it so that they're not dark.
That's why it's called a tunnel, by the way,
because
because it's under.
Under. Well, I wasn't sure because it had to be open to the light. Smarty pants over there.
Okay, can we go from an incredibly uplifting story to one of the most horrible stories Marjorie and I have talked about very briefly this week?
Oh, God.
There was a panel, obviously a Trump panel, that votes because making sure that in the Gulf of Mexico we expand our oil and gas drilling as much as we possibly can. They vote unanimously to eliminate endangered protection for these rice whales, and every expert whose comments Marjorie and I have read is that this will mean over a fairly short period of time the total extinction of that whale. Do you subscribe to that conclusion as well?
I totally do. And what is amazing to me is not since 1700, the year 1700, have we lost a North American whale species on our watch. So this is what is happening. It makes me absolutely sick. And when I read that story, one of the things that really struck me was the woman who was the PR person for the oil and gas industry. Her name is, oh gosh, I shouldn't even speak her name because it's probably poison. Andrea Woods.
Yeah.
So she says, quote, "Our industry has a long track record of protecting wildlife while developing offshore energy responsibly." And guess what? How about the 2010 Deepwater Horizon disaster?
Yeah.
1/5 of the species. It wiped out 1/5 of the entire species.
Hey, Sy,
don't know how these people can live with themselves.
Can you describe a rice whale? Because I didn't realize how massive and powerful and beautiful this animal was until I read this story. What is it?
I know. It just kills you. These are baleen whales. Some catch their food with teeth, and some catch them with these like curtains of krill catching stuff. Although these guys actually, I think they actually eat fish and not so much krill. And they're leviathan creatures who live decades and decades and decades. They have their own culture that we know almost nothing about. I mean, a whale, for goodness sakes, some of the smartest, most glorious creatures who are lauded in the Bible for their magnificence. And we're going to let this, not just let it go extinct, but we're going to cause it to go extinct so that we can pump more oil at a time where every other country is saying, ooh, look at this nasty war. This shows us that we need to be using more solar.
No kidding. No kidding. That's just the irony here, too. I mean, we're being held hostage now by Iran, and who knows what's going to happen with the Strait of Hormuz. This should be the time that clean energy is going through the roof, and instead what are they doing? They're taking away these protections. And from what I read, the only big-time protections were not even big-time protections. They were just slowing down the boats and monitoring where these whales were. I mean, that is not exactly sticking your neck out very far, is it?
No, it's just obscene. And since the IWC ruling in 1980, most whales have staged a comeback despite the horrendous noise that we create in the ocean, despite all the fishing gear and boat strikes. Most whales have come back, which is amazing. Yet in the face of this blessing, this second chance that we've been given to undo the horror that we've wrought, then we get this and wipe this animal out. There's only, what did it say, 250?
No, 50.
50 left. That's right. I'm sorry.
50. And by the way, the only habitat in which they can exist, we should have said this earlier, is apparently the Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah.
It isn't like they can go somewhere else and
they
live.
sleep
This is it.
apparently on the surface. That's one more vulnerable to the fish.
Get hit by boats.
Yeah, the
they
boat strikes.
also dive really deep. I mean, they have all these amazing powers that we should be in awe of. It kills me. I mean, I know that on China's watch, they had a beautiful whale called the baji that went extinct in our lifetime on our watch. But that's freaking China, you know? I mean, you'd think the United States would have more sense. And of course, all the conservation organizations are going to sue and try and stop this. And it kills me. And also, where is RFK in all of this?
Oh, he's changed his mind, right?
Right, by the way, when he was an environmental lawyer, one of his causes was whale survival, I should say, when he was semi-sane.
Was a story about chopping off the dead whale's head and putting it on the roof? Was that true or not true? I don't know.
I think the issue was it really on the roof of the car that his daughter says it was? I'm not clear. We're talking to Sy Montgomery.
Who doesn't go down and chop off the head of a dead whale and put it on the roof of his car? I mean, everybody does that, don't
he
they?
Should be head of Health and Human Services.
Okay, well, this is a wild story. The birds building their nests and sticking a bunch of cigarette butts in there.
Yeah, I knew about this, actually. I had read about this, and I've experienced, and probably you have too, what happens when you're sitting next to a smoker in the summertime, and the mosquitoes are eating everyone except for you and the smoker.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I've experienced.
Smoke keeps mosquitoes away?
The nicotine does.
Wow.
And I've seen this happen when I brought my best friend, Liz Thomas, a 3-pack-a-day smoker, to meet an octopus who is also an invertebrate. Like all insects, doesn't have a backbone. They're an invertebrate. And I thought they would get along famously. I think it was Octavia that she was meeting, and she stuck her hands in, and Octavia just went, bleh, couldn't stand it. And what it was the nicotine in her blood. She'd washed her hands, but the nicotine was in her blood, and the octopus could taste that. And birds have learned this, and they seek out cigarette butts to use as insecticides in their nests. It's genius. And they don't just stuff them in the nest. They many of them actually, pull it apart and arrange it. So it's almost like a mosquito net that you would put over your baby's crib to keep it from being eaten. It's a genius thing. And this isn't something that it can't be instinct, because these birds have been living on Earth long before humans had cigarettes. Somebody in that culture made that discovery and made it multiple times, because it's not just one species of birds. They've seen this in numerous species of birds. And I have found cigarette butts in birds' nests. And at first I thought it was just because the filter is kind of soft. And you often find like wild things. We used to find Christopher Hogwood, our pigs, hairs in birds' nests, because those stiff hairs that you get on pigs make good scaffolding for your nest if you're a bird. And sometimes they would come in and they'd pull his hair out, his bristles out, to make a stronger nest. But these animals, they learn stuff and then they pass it on.
Wow. So before we leave the topic, while I understand the benefits of having a cigarette butt in your nest, aren't there, there's a downside too. They benefit.
They're not inhaling it.
Well, I know they're not inhaling it, but
they don't inhale.
Is there a downside, or is the cigarette's presence not a negative in terms of their health?
Yeah,
no?
It can, but just like insecticide, or you put DEET on your clothing, probably it is better not to have these disease-carrying, blood-sucking parasites attack your infants. So
you wonder what they do. Do they go around to the outside of bar rooms? A lot of people that are drinking, they go outside the bar room to smoke or something. They go out because happily fewer people are smoking these days. I guess they fly around to heavy-butted locales and pick up.
Oh, I'm sure they do. I read about some birds will actually build their nest in an ashtray.
By the way, that's true. I read that in the New York Times yesterday.
I love it.
Hey, before we have to go in a minute, but can we end where we started, talking about turtles for a second? I read a story the other day about allegedly the oldest turtle that has ever lived at 193 years old dying, and then the next day I read that it actually hadn't died. What's the oldest?
It was an April Fool's joke, but it wasn't.
No, was it?
Funny.
Oh, that's horrible. I didn't know. That's horrible. What is the longest a turtle has ever lived? 193 years?
Boy, I think over 200. One recently died who was around when George Washington was around.
That is, and why? Why do they have the ability to exist as long as they do, Sy Montgomery?
I think they live their lives slowly. Many of them actually hibernate, so that gives you a little more time. I guess to everything there is a season, and that's as long as they have to complete their lives. It kills me when you think of very short-lived animals. Some mayflies only exist as adults for a day. And you think, how do you get it all done in a day? I can't get it all done in whatever many years. You come to the end of the day and like, damn, I forgot to mate. You don't want that to happen.
Okay.
That ever happened to you or what? Speaking of that, sadly, we don't have time to talk about octopus sex. We'll do that
next
when
time.
you're back in a week or two, okay?
Sure.
Thank you.
We will.
Thank you so much, Sy Montgomery.
Good to see you, Sy.
Sy Montgomery is a naturalist and author, knows everything there is to know about animals. Her latest book for kids and the young at heart, The True and Lucky Life of a Turtle. It's a great book. For grown-ups and for little kids, they love it too. We say goodbye to those of you listening on NEPM. Thank you very much for tuning in the first place. The Fabulous 413 starts at 3 o'clock this afternoon. We're going to keep going here in Boston. Coming up after this quick break, we're going to talk to Lyndia Downie at Pine Street Inn, the region's largest homeless service provider. Joins us with an update on their efforts to expand housing in the city and the impact of decreases in federal. The federal government's kind of targeting homeless efforts in a bad way. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browder. You're listening to BPR and GBH and NEPM, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Trusted reporting is here for you every day on GBH Radio, and the best way to support it is by becoming a GBH sustainer. Sustainers make small monthly contributions that make a big difference. Learn more at gbh.org/sustainer.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And Mass General Brigham. In heart surgery, expertise matters. Mass General Brigham Heart and Vascular Institute performs thousands of surgeries each year and is committed to research and innovation. massgeneralbrigham.org/heart.
And Atlantic Design Center by Eldridge Lumber and Hardware, committed to helping customers achieve their vision for a new kitchen or bathroom and guiding them from design to completion. With showrooms in York and Portland, Maine. AtlanticDesignCTR.com.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Some programming notes for the rest of this week. Former Secretary of State in Massachusetts, Senator John Kerry, who led the negotiations for the 2015 Iran nuclear deal under President Barack Obama, is going to join us tomorrow to talk about that deal and what he thinks about what's happening in Iran.
That's 11 o'clock, by the way. He's going to join us right at the top of the show.
Yes, he is. And on Friday, we're going to have Live Music Friday from the Great Handel and Haydn Society, which is going to be wonderful, plus a conversation with a Cuban journalist and others involved in the humanitarian crisis going on in Cuba, where they haven't had power, and it's really been difficult. Hello again, Jim.
Hello again, Marjorie. We're joined now at the BPL desk by the extraordinary Lyndia Downie, President and Executive Director of the Pine Street Inn, the largest homeless service provider in New England, pinestreetinn.org. Hello there, Lyndia. Nice
Hi.
to see you.
How are you?
Good.
So, Lyndia, things are getting warmer now. It is April, but this winter was really tough. Tell us what you did during that really, single-digit period of time.
Yeah, it's been a long winter. We're very happy spring is here. We added some overflow beds in our shelter, but between last year and this year, we're up almost 24% in terms of new demand. So we added some beds, we added cots and mats in our lobby and our dining room to make sure people could come in. Our outreach vans went out earlier in the night to try and persuade people to come in. And then for folks that wouldn't come in, we did everything we could. Put them in the van for a bit, gave them extra blankets, checked on them multiple times in the night. But the combination of the cold and the snow was really challenging.
You know, during the winter, Shirley Leung has written a couple of really moving, powerful pieces about South Station, which provided some temporary respite, for people who were freezing. It was closed, and then there was a negotiation to open it, and then it was closed again. And there's a horrible story that she and others in the Globe have told about this gentleman, Carville Curry, who at 62 died. And while it's not 100% clear it's because he couldn't get into South Station, it's likely that's the case. What's the status of the South Station being open to provide a modest amount of warmth for people in need?
So station's closed now, although our team is talking to them on a regular basis, the security and the MBTA police, about anybody they're concerned about. They're calling us. We swing, our outreach vans do swing by every night before things close, offer people rides. Some people still don't want rides, still cold at night. The bus station has been opened in a limited capacity, so we do have a place for people to go. But, Shirley did a lovely job really explaining kind of how vulnerable people are. And during this cold spell, really the station was opened. Again, limited basis. We are talking to the MBTA about how do we institutionalize this a bit more. Look, I wish everybody would come in. I wish everybody would take our offer of a ride, but some people don't. Carvel was one of them. Hardly ever came in. And we need a backup. It's New England. It's cold. Not forever, but we are going to have to find a way to make sure we have some backup for folks that can't come in. And do it on a night-to-night basis. We got through the rest of the winter. We're really grateful for the cooperation we had from the MBTA and from Phil Eng, but would like to not leave it to chance going forward.
You know, while you're on that subject, I misplaced the story, but the Globe did a beautiful story about this Lazarus ministry at St. Anthony's Shrine, and they bury people, sometimes babies that have no family, or in this case, Carvel Curry, who I guess he lost a lot of his family. Mm-hmm. 6 high school kids from some Catholic school where the pallbearers carried the coffin. Tell us a little bit more about that whole situation.
Yeah. You know, oftentimes when homeless people die, there is nobody to bury them, literally. It's probably one of the most painful and hardest things when sometimes we have contact a family member and they say, look, I haven't seen so-and-so in 15 years. You know, we've lost all contact, or we can't afford to bury this person. And we often end up in that role along with some of our partners. But what the young men are doing is one of the most touching stories. You know, there's a number of schools that do it for vets who die without any family members, and they come and they're the pallbearers, and they go to the ceremony, and it's just such a dignified way to let people know that, you know, people out there still care about what happens. But it's a really tough one, and it's really beautiful that that Lazarus is doing this, because there's a need for it. I wish I could tell you there wasn't, but happens, you know, all year long.
Well, you know what came through in that story, too, that there were nurses and people that had met Carvel Curry and talked about his personality and how much they enjoyed interacting with stuff. And so you get a real sense of he had troubles, obviously, because he was homeless, but he sounded like a great guy, and people were in tears.
Yeah, it's a really tough one. You know, we had a longtime guest that had a prosthetic that passed away and had no family left. And his name was John, and he was famous for taking his prosthetic off and whacking you with it when he really was really mad about something. But you know what? We loved him. I loved him. He was a funny, really gracious guy. He had a drinking problem, but that didn't take away from this personality.
Yeah.
He was such an engaging, funny guy. And the stories, I mean, just... And you're right. It's people think homeless people don't have a life, don't have stories, don't have a personality, and they're somehow all one thing. They're not. Everybody got there a different way, and everybody has their stories to tell about it.
Do you have the story in front of you?
Before we continue with Lyndia, let me just say, CNN is reporting a la what Dan Drezner said to us, because Israel is continuing to attack Lebanon, Iran has closed the Strait of Hormuz. So this lasted, at least so far, for a grand total of about 16 hours. We'll see what happens from there. I'm sorry.
Jim, I'm just going to ask you, because I misplaced the story. Do you have the story? I wanted to give a credit to the reporter from
I'll find it
Global
when we
who wrote that
continue.
story.
You know, can we? You know, for those who haven't heard you here before, or everybody knows what the Pine Street Inn is, but doesn't know what the primary, a major focus of your work has been. Could you spend a minute on this housing versus permanent housing thing and where you stand after a few years of this?
Yep. So we've been working really hard to get to the root causes of homelessness, and no matter who you are, whether you have a disability or it's just income-based, at the end of the day, we know that housing is going to be the solution. So we hit a big milestone, but a couple of months ago. We now have 1,200 units of supportive housing in Boston and Brookline, where people can live and pay rent, a nominal amount of rent, and where there's some support services for people that are homeless. And, you know, we started out really being a shelter provider. About 80% of what we did every day was shelter, 20% was housing. We've now shifted that. So we're now really mostly a housing provider, which for us has been a really big, long journey, but we're getting there.
So everybody knows the place where good humanitarian efforts go to die is the White House. Donald Trump, I couldn't even figure this one out. They want to defund, they want to take away all federal funding for permanent housing, saying transitional housing, which was the path of the past, is a better route. Is this just sadism as usual? Or no, I mean it sincerely. What is the motivation, as best you can tell? And a federal judge has at least temporarily stalled this effort, right?
Yes, that's right. What's the motivation? I think it's really based on this idea that housing's not the solution to homelessness, and that homeless people, if they could just get their act together, would kind of go through these transitional programs, you know, get a job, get sober, not be mentally ill anymore, and be able to get their life together. And so it's a very much pick yourself up by your bootstraps philosophy, and in their mind, in a year or two, everybody should be able to figure it out and go out in the market and find housing.
So if let's assume that this court's stay on the defunding disappears. I assume the Trump administration is appealing. I don't know. What's the impact of that on efforts like yours and similar ones around the country?
Well, if this goes through and if for some reason, we lose the appeal, people that are currently housed with this pot of federal money will lose their housing. And so
people who are in permanent housing will lose
their homes. That's right. It's about 4,000 people in Massachusetts.
It's a good idea.
It's 170,000 people across the country. And what is baffling about this is that even to go into a HUD-funded transitional program, you have to be homeless. So if you're housed, you are no longer eligible to go into these programs. So you're going to make people homeless again and then say, well, maybe you can go into the short-term program, but what happens in between? It does not make any sense. So that's, I think, the biggest worry. Luckily, we've got a preliminary injunction. It's not rational, and listen, we need transitional programs. Nobody's going to argue that, but fund that separately. Don't make people homeless so that you can fund transitional programs. There's a role for that.
Speaking of government funding, I should know this, and I apologize I don't. What's the state picture like in 2026?
Well, I think it's a tough picture. I think you're seeing the federal cuts have impact, and even the indirect federal cuts. So, for example, the federal there's something called these emergency housing vouchers. There's thousands of them in Massachusetts. We were supposed to have them for 5 years. They went mostly to homeless families. The Trump people basically said, we're not going to give you 5 years. We're taking them away now. So all those families are at risk of losing their housing. So the state is trying to backfill that, which has put pressure on any rental assistance. So the rental assistance pot is really dire at the moment. And then I just think you're seeing the revenue picture get less robust because of a lot of it driven by the federal cuts.
And remember, there's a ballot question that is likely before voters in November that would eliminate $1.5 billion a year
even worse
from the state income tax.
By the way, the reporter, it's Leah Skene, Skene, wrote the piece about the Lazarus Ministry. The headline is, "You Are His Witnesses at Funeral for Homeless Man. Many didn't know him, but still came to mourn." It's a really well-done story about the funeral for Carvel Curry. When you talk about people going out and getting out of their homes that have been homeless and going to find a place to live. In this story about food insecurity, which is, I wish we'd call it hunger. I mean, food insecurity is a weird term, but anyway, 40% of people in Massachusetts, one of the richest states in the country, 40% of people are worried about where they're going to get their next meal. They said in this story that some guy at MIT has figured out that to live in Suffolk County, if you are a family of four, you now need $184,000 per year in salary, which I think is probably out of the range of a lot of people. But anyway, talk about the cost of living. That it's crazy in Boston. You'd have to go, I don't know, to Tennessee or something.
Yeah, I think that is the dilemma, right? Even for people we have now that are working, even some people that are working 2 jobs, they still can't find a rent, especially for a single person. Can't find a lot of studios and 1-bedrooms. It's just not a lot of them around, or you have students in them, or so there's a really limited supply. But more and more, we're seeing two trends. One is numbers going up. 2 is older people that are homeless for the first time. They might have been caring for a relative. They might have been in a long-term building that was sold. They've got to go. There is no way they're going to find another unit if they're paying $1,000 a month. Well, the rent's now $1,400 a month in the market. So people can't just pick up and find something else. So it's absolutely the cost of living. I think during the SNAP crisis, we were really fortunate. We asked our donors to help us get grocery gift cards for people, and what it does is squeeze. People still are poor even once they're housed, so even our tenants are still struggling. And when you take that away, and then you've got to spend cash on food, you don't have it to pay the rent. And that's the kind of layering and scaffolding we're seeing that are really pushing people down.
We've talked a lot about the SNAP benefit thing. One thing we haven't talked about at all is the story in the New York Times today or yesterday about to fund the war. One of the many programs that the Trump administration is proposing to abolish funding for is heating assistance, which is another thing that allows people to stay in their lives. Can we go back for a second? Because everything is so... Can we go back to the permanent housing thing? You've told us in the past stories about the experience you've had with somebody who all of a sudden opened. Could you share a new one with us and tell us what it's like when someone finally has a home that's theirs?
Yeah, I think it gives people a key to a place, but it opens up a key to a whole new life. We had a fellow who came in last year, had some mental health struggles, lost his job, lost his housing, was from Dorchester, and was really, really depressed. And that's what led to the job loss. That's what loss. And one of our clinicians managed to work with him and help him deal with his mental health stuff, get some counseling. He got on medication, and he joined our training program, and he's now working at one of the hospitals as a nutritional aide. But he got an apartment. He got his job first, and then he got his apartment. You should see this apartment. It's beautiful, and it's immaculate, and he's just so proud of it. And his name is Phil, and he's come back to talk to some of our other guests and say, look, you can do this too. I came here and thought, this is it for me. I'm not getting out of here, and boy, what a horrible life. But people, one step, and now he's got his own place. So it's life-changing for people, no matter at what level you're at. It is life-changing. You cannot do the kind of things to get your life together on the street, even in shelter. We try, but boy, is it hard. And so you've got to have some stability if you want to move to a more stable place.
And you've also got services in these buildings too, right? Tell us about those.
So we have case managers in our housing that work with people on whatever it is. Maybe it's a job, maybe it's getting sober, maybe it's getting primary care. It's a whole range of things. A lot of our stuff, though, recently in our newest building, a lot of it's medical stuff. How do we make sure people can get around? Because as people age, mobility is becoming a very big issue for folks. And if you're homeless and you spend a lot of time in shelter around the street, you've aged faster than the rest of the population. So you're dealing with medical stuff. You're dealing with mobility. So ironically, that's been a lot of the work in our newest building on Morrissey Boulevard. We've got 99 tenants there. Well, it's an older population. We agreed to try and make this for elders. Almost everybody there has some medical issue they're dealing with.
So tell us about one of your founders, Frank Kelly. Can you spend a minute on this?
Yeah. So Monsignor Frank Kelly helped start Pine Street about over 60 years ago. He was part of a group called the Association of Boston Urban Priests. They were working on social justice issues a long time ago when Frank was a young man, and there was a rescue mission on Pine Street, which is how we got our name, and it was going to close. They ran out of money. Somebody approached the Priest Association and said, would you all run it? Frank was the president of that board and said, okay, sure. We'll tell you. He had absolutely no idea what they were doing. They ran it for a couple of years, a group of them, this group of, 7 or 8 activist priests. And Frank had the sense to say, look, we need a board, we need somebody to run the show, we have other things to do, we can't just do this. But talk about a mentor and a friend, and he was absolutely my partner in crime. I talked to him every week, and even after 60 years, lost no passion for the work. He was just an amazing, amazing man.
So if you care about this work, as always, we give you a website, pinestreetin.org, and in addition to seeking funding wherever you can get it, we're about to talk to one of the leaders of the marathon about sustainability. Do you have a team?
We do.
What's the deal with that?
Well, so we have a team. We have 10 runners. They all have to raise, I don't know if people know this, they all have to raise $10,000.
Yeah, it's tough.
$10,000?
$10,000.
Are you one of them?
You and I wish I was one of them.
Yeah.
I'd be lucky if I could walk it.
You have to hit up everybody you know.
Yes, yeah, but
you have to
people
go to the
respond.
gym and get everybody on the treadmill.
I think our team, for the most part, they're almost there. I think everybody's almost there. People have had little fundraising events. They've gone to their family and their friends. They've done everything. But what a huge commitment. Run the marathon and train for it. Raise this kind of money. It's a huge commitment. I can't thank them enough for it. And the Marathon and Bank of America for doing this. They've really turned it into a Marathon Plus, an enormous fundraiser locally.
How do people find, on your main website, can they be directed to the Marathon team? Or
yes,
no?
if you go on the website, and if you don't see a link there, just you can call. There's a number there you can call. But yeah, we'd love to have their support and wishing for good weather for all the runners. Right,
How you
and a
doing?
good day. Okay, hanging
Are
in.
you? I mean, no, really. I mean, we marvel. You don't like this at all. Marjorie and I and everybody else who knows you marvel at your work through the years. But you doing how? I mean, it's a tough time.
I think this federal stuff is really hard. It's very hard, and it changes almost every day. And we do a scenario plan and think, maybe this is going to happen. 2 days later, it's all shifted again, and there's it's really hard to keep up with it, and it's hard to figure out what's going to happen next. And I think that's been as stressful as the changes and the dollars going away.
Yeah, it's been a tough time here.
Yeah.
Needless to say.
It's spring, so that's one.
It's spring. Okay, the
plus.
flowers are coming up. The daffodils are lining the marathon route. You see them all the way up and down Commonwealth Avenue and Beacon Street, which is really nice.
So, Lyndia, why don't you and I start training? We can run next year. How about?
Oh my God.
Yeah, I don't think I'm on this either.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming in. PineStreetInn.org for a really important, wonderful organization. Good to see you, Lyndia Downie. Thanks so much. Appreciate
and Lyndia Downie is, of course, the president and executive director of the Pine Street Inn. And one more time, it's PineStreetInn.org. PineStreetInn.org. Coming up after this quick break, speaking of the marathon, we're going to talk from somebody from the Boston Athletic Association about how they're making the marathon greener, more sustainable. That is the next installment of our environmental series, The Long Run. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browdy. You're listening to BPR 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Jared Bowen. Coming up on The Culture Show, Regie Gibson. The Poet Laureate of the Commonwealth joins us as part of our ongoing celebration of National Poetry Month. We talk with the poet, performer, and educator about bringing verse off the page and into public life. Plus, Eartha Kitt's life and legacy take the stage. Jade Wheeler joins us to discuss who is Eartha Mae, her one-woman play about the singer, actor, and activist. That and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on GBH 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you.
And Dover Rug and Home. Rugs and carpeting for today's lifestyle with in-home rug trial and design consultation. Dover Rug in Natick, Boston, Burlington, and online at doverrug.com. Dover Rug. Rugs and the people who know them.
And Hammond Castle Museum presenting Eric Pape Fantasy Illustrations featuring over 100 works by the former Boston-based Golden Age artist with many pieces unseen for nearly a century. On view April 3rd through 26th. Museum tours available, hammondcastle.org.
Welcome back to BPR 89.7 GBH. Marjorie Egan and Jim Browdy. We're at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Back at the library on Friday with live music with the Handel and Haydn Society and a conversation with Cuban journalists and others involved in the humanitarian crisis there. But tomorrow, in studio in Brighton, we'll be joined by former Secretary of State John Kerry. I'm sure you know that one of the things he did as Secretary was, on behalf of Barack Obama, negotiate the nuclear deal with Iran. We'll talk about that and everything that's flowed since. Today is the second of our 5-part BPR series on sustainability and running. It's called The Long Run. Today we're talking to a leader of the Boston Athletic Association here to tell us about how they're making the marathon greener. And it is a steep hill. Oh, you guys really know about steep hills. I just realized I didn't even intend that, but thank you, Jim. In 2023, listen to this. The marathon produced emissions equivalent to driving 9 million miles in a gas-powered car, 64.7 tons of waste, discarded clothing, cups, banana peels, whatever. Here to tell us how they're fixing that mess is Scott Stover. He's Chief Marketing Officer at the BAA. Welcome. It's good to see you.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
We really appreciate it.
Thank you. When you're thinking about it, when you go after the marathon, you do see a lot of banana peels, but they pick them up pretty quickly.
Why don't you ask him, not me? I'm not picking them up.
We try and clean them up as quickly as we can.
Yeah, well, you do. It's amazing how quickly they get cleaned up. But tell us what this is about. How do you make the marathon more sustainable?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. And I think as we look out the window here at the Boston Marathon finish line,
yes,
I think we have a gorgeous day today. And if we have this day a week from Monday, we're going to be pretty happy. I think the runners like it to be on the cooler side, which is what we have today. But really, keeping our event as sustainable as possible is a goal that we've had for several years. And really with our partnership, our official sustainability partner, Schneider Electric, has really helped us and coached us and taught us a lot about what we didn't know. It's one thing to have ideas and thoughts and goals, but you really need help and somebody to come in and help guide you in the process and to develop your goals. And with Schneider, having benchmarked where we were a few years ago, we've now been able to create a goal of reducing our emissions by 42% by the year 2030.
Give us some examples of what you've
like
done.
How?
Well, it's amazing, and every year to me, it's these little incremental pieces, and it's not just the Boston Marathon; it's all of the operations that the BAA has. So I think what a great example is, this past November at our half marathon at Franklin Park, we replaced all of our diesel generators in the park, in the venue, with electric generators. And that makes a huge difference. It's a big impact, not only on the emissions, but the noise, the odors. It's just a much cleaner way to go. So those are the types of things as we go down the road, incremental pieces, one step at a time.
How about cups? I mean, there got to be about 18 billion cups.
Or water bottles. Little water bottles.
There's a lot of cups.
Yeah.
What do you do about those?
So it's all of our cups. We partner with Poland Springs and Gatorade. All of our cups are compostable on the course.
Oh, nice.
So we're able to collect those. But, it's not just about the cups. It's really about what you do with them.
Yeah, of
and
course.
we have, over the course of Boston Marathon weekend, 10,000 volunteers that come out and do this work with us. So we're able to provide those compostable cups to our runners. They take that drink, they throw it back down on the road because they're not stopping to put it in a trash can.
Yeah.
And all of our volunteers come and collect those and make sure that they're disposed of properly.
Do you do this? Why do you do this? Do you do this because of external pressure to be green, or was this like an organic kind of deal internally?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, realistically, the Boston Marathon's 129 years old. This will be the 130th running of the race. And I think we owe it to the race to continue to build it and make it stronger and make sure that it's sustainable to last for the next generation of runners. Every year, more than half of the people that run the Boston Marathon are running it for the first time. And we want people to be able to continue to do that. We want to be able to grow it, and we want to grow the sport, and we want to do it in a responsible way.
We're talking to Scott Stover, who's the Chief Marketing Officer of the BAA, the marathon, obviously, about sustainability.
Okay, so one of the things you always see, and you always think, oh, my goodness, there's a Boston Marathon runner. They have the jackets, and they get the shirts. But somebody was talking about in one of these stories, they were willing to not have a shirt for the sustainability purpose, and you've done something with the jackets, too. So tell us.
Yeah. Well, we're excited this year that our Boston Marathon celebration jacket is returning as an embroidered piece. People wanted that for many years. We have great partners.
What does that mean, embroidered piece?
The logo on the back is embroidered as opposed to screen printed.
Oh, okay.
And it really makes it a very premium item. And we have a great partner in Adidas who several years ago decided they wanted to make the celebration jacket out of recycled material. And they did so, but at the time, it couldn't be embroidered. And there were people who said, I want my jacket. I want my jacket the way it always has been. And now Adidas, over the last few years, has developed an opportunity to do that. And so we're bringing that jacket back. It is still a very sustainable jacket, yet it is embroidered. So, so we make progress.
That's pretty cool.
I'm embarrassed. I'd never even thought about the sustainability issue vis-a-vis you guys until we knew you were coming. And by the way, this report is incredibly detailed and interesting. It's called Sustainability at the BAA. Can I hold that up? I mean, you can't really read it. Do people want to get a copy of this thing? How do they do that?
They can find that on our website, which is BAA.org.
So how about travel? I mean, people come from all over the world.
Yeah.
We always hear how many countries, how many this, whatever kind of thing. I know you have a deal with JetBlue, which is that your lead? Is that your
JetBlue is our official airline sponsor.
And there's a carbon offset deal with them, right? Is that right? If people take JetBlue, what's the deal with that?
If people take a JetBlue flight, they can choose to purchase an offset to offset their emissions from that flight.
Do people do that?
I don't know the answer to how many people do that. And I think that there are some things that are truly in our control and some things that are not. So as an example, we use about 460 school buses on race day to take people from Boston Common to the start line in Hopkinton. This year, for the first year, we're introducing electric buses into that mix.
Nice.
That's great.
It's not enough. We need to do more. There aren't that many electric buses available. So we will ultimately grow that, but that's how we can slowly and incrementally reduce those emissions.
Okay, I don't want to go down an endless list, but I'm thinking when you mentioned buses, we've all seen the image of everybody shedding all their clothes and just tossing their clothes in Hopkinton. What happens to what's going on with those?
That's great. Anybody who knows a marathoner knows that every marathoner has a drawer full of clothes that they're willing to part ways with.
That's right.
And they'll wear those additional layers to the start, and just before they run over the start line, they'll rip it off. They'll throw it on the side of the road. We collect it all. And last year, we collected and donated 20 tons of clothing
20 tons.
to local organizations and nonprofits.
So, Scott, is there a lot of pressure when you work for the BAA to get out there and run the marathon? Are you running this year?
Well, I would love to run the Boston Marathon, but I have to work that day.
Oh, okay.
So I'm unable to make it happen.
That's your excuse.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we have 40 really dedicated and hardworking members of our staff. We have hundreds more on our organizing committee, and I mentioned 10,000 volunteers. None of us can run that day, and many of us would love to, but we just can't. So, we do the best we can to keep each other motivated to run other events throughout the year and back each other up.
Before you go, though, you obviously are an expert in marathons because you work there and that sort of thing. A question that's...
I'm not sure that's true.
That has gone on back and forth between Marjorie and me for 27 years.
Here we
been
go.
on the radio. Excuse me,
We're not
I'm
gonna
talking
do
to
this
Scott,
again.
Marjorie. Marjorie and I, when we were a lot younger, both ran a couple of marathons.
Yeah.
Looking at us as you are, just you look at Marjorie, look at me, who would you think had a faster time? Based upon, excuse me, am I talking to Scott or am I talking to you? What would you think the answer to that was?
Well, I wouldn't want to go down that road because what I think is the most important thing is getting from the start line to the finish line.
That's
and it sounds like you both have
a diplomat too, in addition to being the chief marketing officer.
I was faster.
Scott, no, she wasn't. Scott, this is really great. Sustainability at the BAA. Check out the report. Congratulations on your work and good luck a week from Monday. We're very excited.
Thank you for coming. I hope you get a great day like today.
Hope so. Thank
we have
you.
been speaking with Scott Stover. He is Chief Marketing Officer with the Boston Athletic Association, and the long run, our little series here we're doing prior to the marathon, is made possible by Schneider Electric. Thank you, Scott, for coming in. Coming up after this quick break, we're going to open the lines to get your thoughts on so-called superfoods. Maybe people that run the marathon are using a lot of superfoods now. Those powders and extra things are supposed to make you in tip-top shape. Are they the key to health? Is key to health and longevity, or just another multi-million-dollar scam? Are you better off just being an everyday person like Jim, who comes to work every day with his little tiny containers of little raspberries and blueberries and Brussels sprouts? Are you a Brussels sprout influencer like Jim Browdy is? I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browdy. You're listening You're listening to BPR 99.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
When you're getting ready for the day, get ready with us.
Welcome to GBH's Morning Edition. Thanks for having us with you.
GBH's Morning Edition with Mark Hurst.
Looking at local headlines this morning.
More local news.
More diverse voices.
More unique perspectives.
The gateway cities closer to Boston have seen a lot of investment. Others, particularly further west, haven't gotten that same level of investment.
GBH's Morning Edition. Weekdays starting at 6 on GBH 89.7 and streaming on the GBH News app.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Schneider Electric, bringing sustainability advisory services to the Boston Athletic Association and committed to helping advance energy tech worldwide. Learn more about the Schneider Electric and BAA partnership at se.com.
And Central Square Theatre, presenting Breaking the Code, the story of British mathematician Alan Turing, who broke the Nazis' Enigma code only to be persecuted by his own government for his sexuality. Now through April 26th. centralsquaretheatre.org.
Welcome back to BPR 89.7 GBH. Marjorie Egan and Jim Browdy live. YouTube.com/GBH News. Tomorrow at 11 o'clock, John Kerry, former Secretary of State, joins us in studio in Brighton to talk about the deal ripped up by Donald Trump that he negotiated with his colleagues with Iran under Barack Obama in 2013, and obviously what his reaction is to the current mess we're in. So every few years, it seems like there's a new super thing that promises a range of health benefits. Now it's things like, I don't even know how to pronounce this, spirulina, I think, powder, mushroom, adaptogens. You ever heard of that?
No.
Neither have I. And supplemental vitamins for seemingly every ailment. They're all part of a multi-billion-dollar supplement industry that claims to boost nutrition and health benefits. But many suggest that these do little except drain your wallets. We want to know where you are on all these supplements and these magic cures or healers or that sort of thing. Have you bought in? You can tell us what your favorite superfood is. And if you are one of those super thing suckers who are spending hundreds, if not more, dollars on these things, are you opting for powdered nutrients? Like, it's almost all green. Have you noticed green powders?
Super greens.
You put in
by
things
Live It Up. That's
trying to
a
access
company.
healing properties, or are you somebody like me, of course, who believes in natural whole foods to live a healthier, more enriching life? Thank you. The number is 877-301-8970.
We call Jim Raspberry Man around here.
Thank you.
Some days it's Blueberry
Man. By the way,
Man.
nobody has ever called me Raspberry Man. Nobody.
Little tiny containers. And today it was Brussels sprouts. As I said before, Jim Browdy is known around GBH as a Brussels sprout influencer for his many different recipes.
You know, your comments reek with jealousy, I should say. 877-301-8970.
I wish I were a Brussels sprout influencer too, Jim.
You probably do. Now, let me ask you, Hannah, our coworker, says, my aunt has been cracking open spirulina capsules into her morning smoothie for 50 years. Formative memory for me is watching The Ritual as a kid. The only thing it seems to do is stain the blender. That's pretty good. And remember Art Kaplan, who was on our show regularly for years, said these multivitamins are a total waste. In fact, I read this. This is a story. This is a piece that was in the Annals of Internal Medicine.
There you go.
It's called Enough. Well, I haven't said it yet. Enough is Enough. Stop wasting money on vitamins and mineral supplements. And they go on to say, not only do they not do anything with very few exceptions, vitamin E and beta-carotene, is that what it's called?
Beta-carotene.
Can actually be harmful to you in high doses. I mean, you know what I do? I mean, since you brought it up.
Yes.
Brussels sprouts and salmon has gotten me to this point in my life. And I feel fairly healthy and fairly
or the
good,
shrimp
you know?
You brought it in like in a plastic bag and put in the microwave, and oh my God.
Do you take any of this crap?
Salmon.
By the way, I have to say,
I take vitamins.
I take a I don't even know why I do it, because they're not cheap, by the way.
Because when I was a little girl, I did the Flintstone vitamins. I thought I should keep going with the Flintstones vitamins.
You take Flintstone vitamins?
I don't take Flintstone vitamins now, but I take vitamins because it's like one a day. It seems like it's not that big of a deal. But some of these things are pretty expensive.
Remember the great Stephen Wright joke, by the way?
What?
About Flintstone vitamins? Stephen Wright, who's a local guy, says, the Stones, they just keep doing it. Fred and Barney, sort of.
I used to like the Flintstones. That was a great cartoon. But people hawk this stuff. I mean, a lot of these podcasts.
Dr.
Oz used to hawk these stuff all the time.
Medicaid.
Joe Rogan advertises these different things. Hugh Jackman, the great actor that sings and dances and does all these things. He's like a very energetic guy.
Because he takes spirulina powder.
And some of these things, AG1 Next Generation.
What is that?
Goes,
that was in the Globe story.
Yeah, that goes for $100 for 30 servings. I don't know. It's a moss tone powder backed by multiple placebo-controlled human clinical trials. Well, that's from the person who's got some association with it.
Yeah.
And AG1 uses influencers and celebrities to promote its products. Hugh Jackman, as I said, and some guy from Stanford, Dr. Andrew Huberman. I never heard of him. And then there's this guy.
Never heard of us.
There's also the Super Greens by Live It Up, which I said before. That costs you $60 for a 30-day supply. But in the Globe, the reporter Alexa Gangos, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, she interviewed this woman, Julia Brittam, and her husband. And this case, this Super Greens is like a dark green powder, and you put it in water, and they drank it every day. It's supposed to give you better gut health, stronger immunity, and the easiest way to get your greens if you don't want to be a super influencer.
What are you doing, like an ad for these people?
Well,
what are you reading the whole story?
I'm telling people what they are.
Yeah.
But the couple thought they weren't helping.
So none of this stuff is regulated. You know that,
It's not
that kind of
regulated.
thing. It's all and it's all advertisements. And you often say, "I listen to the radio all night." Usually music, but occasionally talk radio comes on. You ever hear these infomercials like in the middle of the night for these drugs? They're going to cure your memory.
Yeah.
They're going to cause your sex drive to explode.
That's
and all
right.
that. And I'm not talking about prescription stuff that probably works. I'm talking about all this other stuff. We want to know if you're into this supplement thing, if you're a multivitamin kind of person. And by the way, I think you're supposed to say in situations like this, we're not giving medical advice because we don't know. We're just reading what we read and having a conversation. So don't hold us responsible. Al on the road, you're first. Welcome to the show. Hello.
How you doing, guys?
I think we're good.
Good to hear you.
Thank you.
I approach this with a hybrid version. I take one of those superfood shakes every day.
Yeah.
I
You
try
do?
to eat some whole foods. And, it's stuff called Kachava. I've been taking it for a while. I like it.
So what do you think? What do you think feels different to you now after taking it for a while, Al?
I've been taking it for a couple of years now.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be a meal replacement, but I train enough that I just use it as a supplement. But it covers all my bases as far as proteins, superfoods, vitamins and minerals, things like that, electrolytes.
But what's the impact, though? Are you healthier?
Well, he sounds like he's very healthy. He's training all the time.
But he's healthy because he's training, not because he's taking this crap. How much do you spend on this a month, do you think, Al?
It's not cheap. It's like $60 a month.
It's a lot of money.
Okay, is this a prune shake with oatmeal? Is that what you're eating or drinking or something?
No, it's a powder. It's a mix called Kachava.
Oh, okay.
It's supposed to have all sorts of stuff in it.
Okay.
I mean, the list of ingredients is pretty long, and I don't understand most of it, but it seems to work pretty well. I like it.
Well,
But
there you
again,
go. So
I like-
you're a believer. You
But
think it's good.
but let's be clear here. You have no evidence it's working really well. You sort of feel like it's working really well, correct?
Yeah, and if it's only psychosomatic, I don't care because I still feel better.
Yeah.
You know? But I try to eat well as well. You know, I have oatmeal with blueberries and chia seeds in the morning.
Yeah.
I have a salad for lunch.
Wow.
You know, I try to do a little bit of both.
Al, you raise
raise
a really interesting issue that I've been struggling with for years. How do you get chia seeds out of your teeth? Do you have to floss after you have
get switch to swallow.
You have to. Okay. All right.
Okay.
Thank you,
Al,
Al.
how do you
for the
feel
call.
about Brussels sprouts? Jim is a Brussels sprout influencer.
Yeah. How about it, Al?
I don't mind them, but I don't eat them a lot.
Okay.
That's very sad
Thank you
to
very
hear.
much.
Al, thank you. Obviously, I've failed with one listener. By the way, do you like Brussels sprouts? I can't
love
remember.
Brussels sprouts. I
They're
do.
like
I'm
little
not
tiny cabbage
I'm not as dedicated. Little
experiences.
tiny cabbage experiences. I'm not as dedicated as you are, but I do.
Can I say
do
two
like
words to you?
Yeah.
Air fryer.
Air fryer.
It's a whole new kind of experience, the Brussels sprout in the air fryer.
Okay, we have someone who says they've been taking collagen powder for years.
What's that for?
Beautiful skin, beautiful hair, and beautiful nails. Does not work on bones. As you get older for women, a lot of women get osteoporosis. But
They do?
This person says, yeah, it's been very good for her skin, her hair, and her nails. And another texter who is not into this whole thing says, my go-to superfood is Cocoa Puffs.
By the way, one of our colleagues said Brussels sprouts cooked in bacon fat are definitely a superfood. I do not. They are better that way, but I do not. That's not my influence.
You should go to the
in
Jim
kind
Browdy homepage, and you can see Jim is pictured with his Brussels sprouts.
By the way, I don't know what is mockable. I mean, in all seriousness, my two favorite. It is probably my favorite vegetable. Is there anything wrong with that?
No, it's
okay,
just
fine.
It's just funny.
And salmon is my favorite.
Little containers.
And the reason you ridicule
Bring me
it is
fruit.
because they
That's
both
very nice
smell
of you.
bad. Is that it?
Well, the Brussels sprouts don't smell. No, the Brussels sprouts don't smell bad.
How
It's
about the
fish.
salmon? You like
the
that?
The salmon is horrible. It's horrible.
Okay,
But you're
good.
supposed to eat a lot of salmon because it's rich in
Omega-3s.
Omega-3s. That's
Yep.
right. Salmon, walnuts, flaxseed, canola oil, fatty fish,
Fatty
which
fish.
Jim specializes in. He's also
Thank
a
you.
fatty fish influencer.
Thank you.
Let's go to Carol in Winchester. Hi,
Yeah,
Carol.
Okay, this is not funny. Go ahead, Carol.
Hi,
What's up?
how are you?
I'm
Good.
fine,
We're
thank
good.
you.
How are you?
Fine, thanks.
All right, so I was taking turmeric supplements. Sorry, my hearing now.
Yeah, that's our fault. What's
Yeah.
turmeric? What's that for?
Okay.
What's that do?
So I was taking turmeric supplements in 2022,
Yeah.
and I was taking them for maybe a month. I ended up in Brigham Hospital for 8 days with an acute liver injury. I was yellow. They were bringing in teams of students to say, "This is what jaundice looks like."
Not
Oh,
laughing.
my
I'm sorry,
God.
I'm laughing.
Oh no, my numbers were off the charts.
'Cause of the turmeric?
I had a team of the turmeric supplements, and my bilirubin was up past 30. I had a hepatitis team. I had a pharmacy team and a medical team. And they did every test in the book. They even did like a liver biopsy, and I was told they hate supplements.
So basically, you're recommending against the
they do
turmeric
not like
supplement. Is that correct, Carol?
I don't take anything. I can only take D3 and B12 at a minimum amount, and they like the hepatologists. They don't like supplements, even like the green supplements, things like that, because it's not FDA regulated.
Exactly.
You don't know
Carol,
you don't know what's in those products.
When you decided to take the turmeric, what were you taking it for? What was it supposed to do?
So I have bone-on-bone arthritis.
Oh.
And I had been with some friends because another friend, I won't say, there was a catastrophic, just a terrible situation. So we were kind of gathering to support this friend. And then I was, someone was like, "Oh, I have, knee stuff and this and that." And then I'm taking these turmeric supplements. So I was like, "Oh, okay, I'll start taking them." Literally, I was yellow.
And turmeric is yellow, for those who don't know.
Okay.
Hey, we're glad you're better, Carol. Thank you for the call.
Zoe, who is a turmeric...
She has no idea what she's talking about either. Read her note. It's ridiculous.
She's an influencer like you, Jim. She says it's really good for inflammation.
Turmeric.
Yes, but just eat the actual root, like ginger. Supplements are unregulated. You're better off just eating real food, says Zoe, turmeric influencer.
By the way, if you eat the turmeric root, you don't turn quite as yellow as Carol. That's one of the pluses of the root versus the supplement.
You have not mentioned this.
What?
As we all know, I am a Teddy's peanut butter influencer.
I know.
I prefer the organic without salt.
You do.
Right out of the jar.
A lot of people have been asking that question. I'm really
it's
glad
important
you
to state
clarified that.
I'd rather be a peanut butter influencer than a
Let's hear
Brussels
some
sprout
other really
influencer.
painful stories. Barbara on the Cape, welcome to the show. Hi.
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 I'm a retired nurse and did a lot of walking in my career, and so have a lot of issues with the veins and arteries. And I have taken a supplement that was said to help, and it did, and it does. And so I thought, well, maybe I'm just thinking it does. So I stopped taking it. I started getting the pain, the symptoms back. So in that instance, I think it helps. The other thing is that I believe that the quality and the preparation of the food now is not always, at what we think it might be. I think that with the different processing, maybe we're not getting everything we need from our food.
Barbara, we got to let you go. That's a thoughtful call, but it's a horrible connection, and so thank you. She's saying also the quality of food, if you didn't hear the second half, that a supplement worked for her. I couldn't understand what the condition was because the connection was bad, and that food itself is not as healthy as it used to be or some
Now,
such
apparently on The Pit, I must not have gotten to this episode yet because I am big into The Pit, the TV show,
So is Zoe.
Well, a lot of did you see the episode about the turmeric-induced liver damage? Yeah, there was just a story in The Pit about liver poisoning from turmeric supplements. Is that season 1 or season 2? Do we know? It's season 2, says Derek. Derek says it's season 2. I'm at number 10 of season 2. So it's going to be toward the end. I'm going to look forward toward the end.
Okay, this is like a private conversation.
Okay.
We don't need to have this on the show.
If people
By the way,
haven't
there's
seen The Pit,
nothing like
Jim
a good
can't watch The
episode
Pit.
about turmeric poisoning to excite an audience. That's what I'm always been looking for.
Jim can't watch Raspberry Man over there. He can't watch The Pit because it's too bloody.
I'll tell you, no, it is
Yeah.
not why. I watched the first episode. I loved the show. I love the guy.
Right.
The first episode, they're in the ER, and the guy has a horrible burn or something, and they twist and pull off the bottom of his leg.
Well, you see nothing yet. get further into season 2 and somebody comes in with half his leg gone, and you see the leg on the table, and you see the person without the leg.
You know what happened? Turmeric. That's
no, mercury poisoning. So he just reminded me there was a person that got mercury poisoning from skincare lotion or something.
Sounds great.
You better watch out with your wrinkle cream. You never know what could happen.
Do you remember when you were in a grade school?
Yes.
Do you remember when you handled mercury for the first time? You weren't supposed to touch it.
That's
but
right.
how exciting was that in science class?
The way it kind of all went together.
Rolling kind of thing. And the teacher said, "Don't touch it. You touch it anyway." It was incredible. Thank you. Two of our colleagues said it simultaneously. That explains a lot. It does. But you know what you take when you have a mercury poisoning? Turmeric. Exactly. Okay. How many times can we use that joke, which is not even funny? One time.
Susie from Bellingham. What do you think, Susie?
How are you?
Hi, guys. I'm good. I wanted to comment on the turmeric woman.
Please, I wish you would.
Ordeal.
Yeah.
And I learned on another show on GBH that where they harvest turmeric, there's a lot of lead. And if they don't filter it out when they grind it up and make it into powder, it's very dangerous.
Well, you should generally get lead-free turmeric is my position. What?
I mean, that woman that got so sick, that could have been partially why she got so sick. Yeah.
Maybe it is. It is.
Yeah, we have a lot
Susie,
of Pitt fans here. I must have 20 emails about the turmeric episode. I know, that's why I'm watching. I'm trying to
that guy's pretty
trying
cute
to be hip
too. What's
and
his
with
name?
the program. I forget his name, but he's really
good looking
he's the
guy.
chief. Dr. Robbie. He's very handsome. I don't know what his real name is.
Nobody knows.
He's going on sabbatical,
knows
though,
his
so we're
name.
very upset because that.
Wait, on the show he's going on sabbatical?
He's going on sabbaticals at the end of the day. It goes hour by hour through the day in the emergency room.
Yeah.
Be happy you're not in the emergency room at the Pit.
You don't
it's
like
really
gore.
bad.
How'd you make it past the pulling the guy's leg off, breaking it off?
I don't have as many gore problems as you do.
That's not true, actually.
No, I got over gore. Having babies will get you over the gore thing. Yeah, it kind of does.
Okay, good.
Listen to this. This person is very upset about liver possibilities, and they recommend milk thistle. This person with liver problems, so they took milk thistle every day, and the liver problems went away. I have no idea.
We're not making a recommendation.
We're not making any recommendations because we have no idea
thistle
what we're talking about. All we know is that Jim Browdy
is a Brussels sprouts influencer.
Stan from Queens.
Wait. What is that? First of all, the show's over. Stan, you have 15 seconds because Margie doesn't know how to read a clock. 15 seconds. Go.
Maybe if I ate more Brussels sprouts,
okay,
I
fine.
could read
Stan,
the clock.
hi, quickly.
Hi, Stan.
It's going well. Okay.
Oh, you there?
10 seconds
we're
now.
almost
Go
out
ahead.
of time.
Hello, Margaret.
Hi.
Hello to you.
I just want to say I love your show.
Thank you.
And I do a smoothie in the morning.
Oh.
I put turmeric, beets, and ginger. And everything's fresh. It's delicious. And I think it's helping me. It's lowered my blood pressure.
Okay.
Have your friends tell you that you're a little yellower than you were in the past, or apparently not? Okay, Stan, we're sorry we had to cut you
off. You
off.
can't get a tan. Maybe you get the yellow look for the summer.
Yeah.
For those
Beets
of us
are good too, by the
tan.
way. But by the way, I started eating beets like 6 months ago. I've never had a beet in my life that I liked. I'm now not quite a beet influencer, but I'm moving up. And why not have a real beet instead of those $60 bottles?
Well, that's the point. They said you're supposed to eat a lot of
bottle?
fruits and vegetables, but most people don't eat enough fruits
Okay,
and vegetables. So that's the deal,
Okay.
Mr. Raspberry over there.
And Marjorie's good.
Thank you very much for listening to another edition of Boston Public
A
Radio.
lot of
89
fiber in raspberries, by the way.
Thank you. No, you gave me some
Try it.
raspberries
I did.
last week. I ate them all
Your
weekend.
fiber content's a lot higher. It is. This
Okay.
show's over, Marjorie. Let's move it.
You can keep up with us 24/7 wherever podcast or check out our TikTok page at Boston Public Radio. Tomorrow we're going to be joined by former Secretary of State John Kerry, who led the 2015 Iran nuclear deal.
By the way, I haven't heard him say a word about this, though. I'm
Neither have
really
I.
excited. to
I haven't heard
talk to
Obama say a
Secretary
word
Kerry.
about it either.
That's a wonderful point.
GBH's Jared Bowen will be with us, the culture show guy. Also, Boston Marathon bombing survivors Patrick Downs and Jessica Kensky.
great.
They are a great couple. We're going to speak with them. They recently celebrated the life of their recovery dog named Rescue.
By the way, Rescue was on my show, television show with them a bunch of years ago.
Okay, stay tuned to the Curiosity Desk right after us. I'm sorry I don't have time to thank everybody who helped us today, but I ran out of time because I was too busy.
Talk too much.
I was talking too much.
Your Brussels sprouts.
The Brussels sprout, the
And
culture show is on
raspberries.
at 2, and Edgar B.
Salmon.
Hurd III, the Curiosity Desk is on at 1. I'm Marjorie Egan.
Jim Browdy.
Brussels sprout influencer.
Oh my God, bye.
From the stories of centuries past to discoveries that will define our future, How Did We Get Here's how-tos and more. Journey with us down the rabbit hole on the Curiosity Desk. Coming up next on GBH 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And PNC Bank, who believes when you pay attention to the details, amazing things can happen. Like when you check the pockets of a jacket you haven't worn since last fall and find $20. PNC Bank. Brilliantly boring since 1865. And M&M Skylights, located in Stoneham, installing and servicing the full range of Velux skylights that can help bring air and more natural light into homes. Skylight consultations can be scheduled at mmskylights.com.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. Today on the Curiosity Desk, if Steven Spielberg were making Jaws in 2026, the residents of Amity Island would not be evading a killer shark, but instead Lone Star ticks. We're about a week into a new statewide system tracking alpha-gal syndrome, where one wrong bite can cause a lifelong allergy to meat and dairy. Nowhere in New England is this more of an issue than on Martha's Vineyard, for now.
They're determined. They're coming.
Plus, it doesn't matter what language you speak, even if you're totally illiterate. Everyone understands emojis. But did you know that anyone can make an emoji too? How? We'll talk with someone who has invented more than 100 of them. It's all ahead this hour on the Curiosity Desk.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Janine Herbst. President Trump says any country supplying military weapons to Iran will face a 50% tariff. This after Trump agreed to a 2-week ceasefire with Iran as both countries try to negotiate an end to the war. NPR's Deepa Shivaram has more.
Trump says many of the 15 points in the U.S. plan for Iran have been agreed to, including no enrichment of uranium in Iran. But Iran says otherwise and previously put forth its own 10-point proposal. In his initial social media post on the short-term ceasefire, Trump said Iran's plan is a workable basis on which to negotiate. In a post since then, he also writes that the U.S. and Iran will discuss sanctions and tariff relief. Pakistan helped facilitate the 2-week ceasefire between the U.S. and Iran and invited both parties to Islamabad later this week to finalize negotiations. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said there are ongoing discussions about the talks, but nothing has been finalized. Deepa Shivaram, NPR News.
Farmers in the heartland are hoping the ceasefire in Iran will hold and the Strait of Hormuz will open, but many also don't expect fuel or fertilizer prices to go down anytime soon. NPR's Kirk Siegler has more from North Dakota.
Farmers were already dealing with high equipment and fertilizer costs due to inflation and President Trump's latest trade war, and the war in Iran has driven up those costs even more. Justin Sherlock grows corn and soybeans.
We really need this to be resolved soon, and for the oil and energy markets to try and stabilize if we can.
Sherlock is going into his 4th straight year in the red. The farmers here still holding on are only surviving because land prices are so high, and that's collateral to the banks.
We're at a point where we're literally betting the farm to try and keep going one more year right now.
Farmers hope the war and geopolitics don't get in the way with ongoing trade negotiations with China, traditionally North Dakota's largest buyer of soybeans. Kirk Siegler, NPR News, Fargo.
The Texas Board of Education is considering a new social studies curriculum for grades K through 12 that led to protests outside the board meeting yesterday. Greta Diaz-Gonzalez-Vasquez with member station KUT has more.
The changes to the curriculum are based on a new framework that emphasizes Texas and U.S. history and de-emphasizes world history. Critics say its Western and Christian approach limits students' understanding of the world. Adrian Reyna, a public school teacher from San Antonio, says the curriculum is focused on Texas and American exceptionalism,
which denies our students and our community the opportunity to learn of some of the things that perhaps were not our shining moments, but were also critical to help us learn some lessons about how to better deal with some of the problems that we face as a community or as a country.
The board is set to take a final vote in June. I'm Greta Diaz-Gonzalez-Vasquez in Austin.
You're listening to NPR News in Washington.
Good afternoon with the latest from the GBH newsroom in Boston. I'm Craig Lamolt. The state's Supreme Judicial Court heard arguments today in a lawsuit that's trying to stop the redevelopment of White Stadium in Boston's Franklin Park. The stadium is currently undergoing renovations to serve as a home for Boston Legacy FC, the city's new pro-women's soccer team, as well as a hub for Boston Public Schools athletics starting next year. Justices today focused questions on how the project would impact roads around the stadium and on the intricacies of past statutes dealing with the White Stadium parcel. The project is expected to cost $325 million, with Boston taxpayers responsible for up to $135 million of that price tag. Boston Mayor Michelle Wu filed her budget for fiscal year 2027 today. The budget increases by just a little over 2%, which is the lowest growth rate since 2010 fiscal year, as well as below the current rate of inflation. In a press release, the mayor's office acknowledges that tough economic times mean the city is no longer able to provide the same level of funding for nonprofits, small businesses, cultural institutions, and others in the city. We'll have more on that later today here on GBH about what programs would see the biggest cuts in the mayor's proposed budget. Sunny today, a high in the mid-40s. More sun tomorrow with a high in the mid-50s, and more sun on Friday. It's pretty nice getting into the mid-60s Friday, and right now looks like a nice weekend. Sunny both days with a high near 60. The Red Sox are getting ready to host the Brewers this hour. That game starts at 1:35. This is GBH.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation, investing in creative thinkers and problem solvers who help people, communities, and the planet flourish. More information is available at hewlett.org.
Listening to the Curiosity Desk on GBH. I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. We are streaming live at youtube.com/GBH News. In case you have not heard, this Friday our show is going to be live at the Boston Public Library, and we are going to be bringing you magic on the radio with All Things Considered host Arun Roth. If you've got a deck of cards at home, one of his tricks, we are told, will work. So you can participate from home. You just got to have 4 cards, at least some of which you don't mind ripping up. We will also have cards at the library if you can join us there. All right, last week, Massachusetts began officially tracking alpha-gal syndrome. You might have heard about this. This is those Lone Star ticks that can bite and create an allergic reaction inside of someone to meat and dairy. Now, nowhere in Massachusetts is alpha-gal more of a concern than out on Martha's Vineyard, where we talked with 2 scientists working tirelessly to track ticks and spread awareness. They're both with the Martha's Vineyard Tick Program. Biologist Patrick Roden-Reynolds is their director, and Leah Hamner is their epidemiologist. She said the new state tracking system, pretty big deal.
It's a huge game changer for us. The difference in terms of making this a reportable disease versus what we were doing before is that what we were doing before is we were working with our hospital to know the total number of alpha-gal tests performed and the total number of positives. Now that tracking has shown a dramatic increase in total tests done year to year since 2020, as well as the total number of positives. But the thing about alpha-gal syndrome is that we actually do need to do the next step of figuring out if an individual has consistent symptoms, allergic symptoms, not just whether they're positive on a blood test. Because it is actually possible to test positive on a blood test and have no allergy at all. And that lack of allergy means you do not need to cut these things out of your diet. You are not experiencing the allergy. However, there are definitely people on Martha's Vineyard, lots of people on Martha's Vineyard, who are actively having allergic reactions. And so getting that number that is a subset of the total positive tests is kind of our white whale right now, because we're having this conversation with our community about how many people are actually living with this allergy. And it's been a bit of an elusive number for us to actually then make decisions on how to support our community. So the fact that the state made it reportable allows us to take that next step productively and really be able to flesh that out.
So let's get into this a little bit in terms of what exactly happens with alpha-gal syndrome, because it's a little bit unusual and slightly complicated. So how is it that a tick bite can cause somebody to essentially develop an allergy to something?
Such a good question. And frankly, this is an unusual allergy and an unusual tick problem on both sides.
Yeah.
So we honestly call it paradigm shifting. So what's happening, as far as we understand it, is that when the tick bites, in its saliva is the molecule galactose alpha-1,3 galactose, which is a total mouthful. We call it alpha-gal for short. So when the tick bites and their saliva goes into our bodies, some of us don't react to it and we just have a tick bite, and maybe it's itchy, and that's the biggest problem we deal with. But another portion of us who get those bites, our immune system might decide, foreign invader, alert, alert, even though it's not actually a foreign invader. It's just a molecule. This is the thing about allergies. It's not actually attacking us. Our immune system just decides this is not supposed to be here and creates this allergic response. And so then people weeks to months later start having symptoms when they're exposed to alpha-gal again. And usually alpha-gal, we have it in our diet. And so alpha-gal is a sugar molecule that you can find in four-legged mammals. So it's not in humans, which is why our immune system says, hey, this
shouldn't be here. This doesn't look right.
But it is in four-legged mammals. So for example, we get this question often, can my dog get alpha-gal syndrome? No, your dog cannot get alpha-gal syndrome because your dog already has alpha-gal in its body.
And its immune system knows exactly what it is and says, you're supposed to be here. You belong here.
Exactly. And so when we, if we develop an allergic response, our body basically is saying, oh no, you're eating something foreign that shouldn't be here. And then we start getting this allergic symptom. So we don't actually know why some people develop alpha-gal syndrome and some people don't. That's a question science really still needs to answer, and we're working actively on it. But there's a lot of people who are getting Lone Star tick bites, never getting allergic. There's also definitely folks who are getting Lone Star tick bites and becoming allergic. And so that's kind of the next step in science that we need to solve.
So let's talk about those Lone Star tick bites on Martha's Vineyard. Patrick, can you give us a sense of the scope of this problem? Just walking around Martha's Vineyard, how likely are you to bump into somebody who is or has been affected by alpha-gal syndrome?
It's becoming more and more common each day. I think looking at the testing data, the disease trends, that Lyme disease is still probably the most prevalent tick-borne disease on Martha's Vineyard. But alpha-gal and Lone Star ticks have become public enemy number one, and they've essentially consumed a lot of people's concerns and fears around tick-borne disease and tick bites.
So, a lot of people, I think a lot of people either haven't heard of this or have just started hearing about this. As you point out, the numbers are skyrocketing over the last, say, 5 years on Martha's Vineyard. It sort of feels like, to some extent, it's come out of nowhere. Do we know where this change in how big of a problem this came from? Is it that these Lone Star ticks are new to Martha's Vineyard? What's happening?
At least that's part of the reason. I think Leah could talk about how alpha-gal is fairly new discovery, or at least documented in 2009 or so. But at least for the tick problem on Martha's Vineyard is the tick program has been doing surveys and finding an established Lone Star ticks on the vineyard since 2011, which means they were probably around a little bit earlier then. But it took a little lag time or a little delay for the Lone Stars to spread and proliferate across the vineyard, where now I think really since like 2017, that's when we saw an uptick in tick-borne diseases, not necessarily alpha-gal that early, but things like ehrlichiosis and the other associated diseases with Lone Star tick.
You listen to the Curiosity Desk on GBH. We're talking with Patrick Roden-Reynolds and Leah Hamner about alpha-gal syndrome and how ticks are impacting culture on Martha's Vineyard. Patrick, can you just tell us, you say tick surveys. How does one do a tick survey? I'm picturing people out there with clipboards trying to stop ticks as they walk past and saying, like, can I talk to you for a minute?
Almost.
Yeah.
So my main duty through this position is a residential yard survey, which started as a research program trying to figure out, what characteristics in people's backyards were indicative of deer tick or black-legged tick abundances. Because, back when the survey started, we weren't really finding many Lone Star ticks. It is now very much a public health education and outreach effort. So I visit people's homes, and do a one-on-one consultation with them where I drag or flag the yard for ticks. And that's the number one way for collecting ticks for science is dragging or flagging. And it's a piece of cloth, like a flannel material, attached to the end of a broomstick. Not very high tech at all.
Yeah. AI's not coming for that.
Right. So the ticks are out there questing. That's how they actually get on the host, is a behavior called questing. So essentially the ticks are sitting and waiting in most cases for some host to come by. And me walking around with that yard or with the flag or the drag kind of mimics or tricks the tick into thinking that it's a deer or a dog or a human or a cat or a bird or something coming by, where they try and get on and latch on for a ride and for a blood meal.
So ticks are they always around? Are they seasonal? When do we really see them take over? Is this are we entering it is time to start paying attention people time, or what's going on?
Absolutely. So tick ecology gets pretty complex because between the different species, the different life stages, a lot of those answers can be nuanced. But at least here on Martha's Vineyard, we've got 3 human-biting species. There's several other species of hard tick that are not necessarily a public health concern. So we have the deer tick, which that's what we locally call it, but the proper common name for the deer tick is the black-legged tick. And then, of course, the Lone Star tick, and then the American dog tick. Those are our 3 human-biting species. And between those 3, the risk of a tick bite is year-round for us. The deer tick adults happen to be most active or searching for a host in the fall, in the winter, when conditions are suitable, and spring, whereas a lot of the other ticks, like the nymph stage of ticks, Lone Star and dog tick in general, they'll be most active kind of from March through October. And you're right, things are ramping up right now. I tend to find that the peak season for when I find the most ticks on the vineyard is late May and early June.
Gotcha. So, and just to be clear, how can you tell a Lone Star tick from a deer tick or a dog tick?
You're not going to like this answer, but by the way they look, their shape and their color essentially will really help kind of distinguish the species apart from one another. I will say there's a great free service called Tick Spotters, tickspotters.com, where folks can submit a photo, and it's a free identification service for if you need to ID a tick. But the characteristic or the diagnostic or characteristic of the Lone Star tick is that lone star or the white dot, which only occurs on the adult female ticks. The adult males, the nymph level or the nymph stage ticks, and larval ticks don't exhibit or show that white spot on the center of the tick's back. But Lone Stars are typically kind of this reddish brown, rusty color, and the females will have a pretty distinct white spot in the center of their back, which makes the females quite easy or much easier to identify, but some of the nymphs and males can be quite difficult.
So Leah, if I find that I have been bitten by a Lone Star tick, what should I do?
Question. So honestly, a lot of folks are going to be really struggling to personally identify the tick that bit them. So I couldn't recommend more looking at tick spotters to help with identifying the tick that bit you, because it's really the reason why that's so helpful is because actually there's pretty specific diseases for each tick. There's very little crossover between the different types of ticks. So knowing which tick bit you is actually great information for what you need to look for. Now, it is unfortunately the answer of what to do next is to wait.
Yeah.
To see if you develop symptoms. You very well might not. There are some infectious diseases that Lone Stars have. The main one that we've identified is ehrlichiosis. And so that looks like a summer flu kind of to start. And then you go to your doctor and try and figure out and tell your doctor, hey, I got bit by a tick too. So let's also consider that this could be tick, or it could be COVID, or it could be flu, but let's consider that too. And then for alpha-gal syndrome, again, it's a waiting game. There's like nothing you can do preventatively to prevent getting alpha-gal. But it is also something where if you're not having symptoms of an allergic response, taking the step of like completely overhauling your diet because you're afraid to get alpha-gal syndrome. Some people have that fear and they go that route, but we haven't seen that being necessarily beneficial to folks. It's a major diet change for a lot of people to exclude red meat, dairy, and potentially other products from. And if they don't need to do that necessarily, then we wouldn't advise it actually. And
yeah, and my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, but another sort of complicating factor here is that unlike a lot of allergic reactions, which tend to happen quite immediately when you've ingested something, sometimes or often when it comes to if you are experiencing the symptoms of alpha-gal syndrome, it can be that it doesn't present itself until a few hours after you've eaten the red meat. So it's a little harder to make that association and say, oh, wait a minute, I'm connecting the dots here. I got bit by a tick. I had some steak. And now 6 hours later, weeks after I got bit by the tick, maybe that's what's happening to me here.
Precisely. This is the tough part about alpha-gal syndrome and why it's a bit different than other allergies is this delayed response. So basically, it takes a while for us to digest the food and then for our immune system to then recognize that this foreign molecule that it doesn't like anymore is there. So 2 to 6 hours later, sometimes even 8 hours later, people are getting reactions. And actually, one of the best ways I've been able to help people identify whether or not they're having alpha-gal syndrome is that we call it often the midnight allergy, because a lot of people are having their steak, their hamburger, their bowl of ice cream, that big dose of mammalian food at dinner. So often, if you're waking up in the middle of the night with hives, with acute gastrointestinal symptoms, with these new things that you haven't had before, that could help you put 2 and 2 together that this might be alpha-gal syndrome. And if you think that you might have alpha-gal syndrome, really the most useful thing that you can do to help that next conversation with your doctor is to begin to write down what you've been eating, when you eat it, and then also how you've been feeling and the timestamps of each of those things and do this like food and symptom diary, because that will be so helpful for you and your doctor to figure out, okay, is this alpha-gal syndrome? Is it something else? What do we need to look at? What do we need to test for? So that level of just trying to pay attention to what you've eaten and how you're feeling in the time of it, critical.
Does alpha-gal go away? Is there medicine? Is there treatment? If I do develop alpha-gal syndrome, do I just have it forever?
Also a great question. And so one of the interesting things about alpha-gal syndrome is for some people, it can go away. Not everyone. And so that's another question that science still needs to answer, why some people get over it and some people don't. But to have a shot at getting over it, you need to not get more tick bites. So it's really critical. Prevention is the cure with alpha-gal syndrome in a way, to not get more tick bites.
All right. So speaking of prevention, Patrick, you just painted a picture of life on Martha's Vineyard where the ticks are about to be around en masse. Obviously, one of the draws of being on Martha's Vineyard or living in Martha's Vineyard is the fact that it's a beautiful slice of nature. So what should folks be doing to prevent tick bites, whether it be from a Lone Star tick or any tick?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So, through my position as a biologist and just my hobbies, I live a very outdoorsy life. But I feel relatively comfortable living here and doing what I need to do, whether it's hunting, hiking, or fishing. I'm not really fearful or paranoid of the ticks. It's more of a caution and awareness. And my top 3 prevention tips are if you're getting bites and want them to stop, it's permethrin treated clothing. I wear a full outfit that includes boots, socks, long pants, and a long sleeve shirt. So by far, permethrin-treated clothing, and whether you treat your own or send it off to be treated by a business called Insect Shield, that's the most effective and one of the safest ways to prevent tick bites. Number 2 for me is just dressing appropriately and simply using your clothing as a protective barrier to keep the ticks off of your skin. And one really critical part of that is tucking in your clothing. So tucking in your shirt tail to your pants, and then tucking in your pants cuff into your boots or socks, or sometimes people will get these tick gaiters that they can wrap around. And the idea is to keep the tick from crawling under the clothing and reaching your skin.
Yep.
And if the clothing is treated, after a minute of exposure, ticks should be starting to feel some effects of the permethrin treatment. And then lastly, I also recommend using like EPA registered repellents because they have a couple advantages over permethrin where they can be used more conveniently, and repellents can be used directly on exposed skin, where permethrin is not for applying directly to your skin. So a combination of those 3 work best for me.
So final question for you, Bo. I wonder if you both weigh in on it really quick, but do we have a sense of why Martha's Vineyard is being impacted in this way, in a way that it seems like maybe not other parts of the state are? Is it just because it's there first and it's going to make its way to Nantucket and to the mainland, or is there something unique about Martha's Vineyard?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head where it's just the Lone Stars kind of arrived in this region first. Been finding them since 2011. We're expecting Lone Stars to spread across, coastal islands and maybe even further inland. I think an important context is like Long Island, New York. They've had Lone Star issues and alpha-gal issues even before us. So Lone Stars came, or their native range is essentially the southeast United States. But since then, they've been kind of encroaching their way northward, mostly up the coast for now. But it is expected to kind of continue further inland.
Leah, I see you nodding there.
Yeah, because I also want to point out, so Barnstable County, they've been finding Lone Star ticks since 2011. So Cape Cod has been finding Lone Star ticks on Cape Cod since 2011. Nantucket is finding Lone Star ticks. It's not nearly as down on the pipeline than the rest of those places. But we're also able to look at our partners' data, like Tick Report, where you can send in ticks to get tested. And they have a public dashboard that I've combed through. And there's definitely Lone Star ticks that have been submitted from other parts of the state, though not nearly the number that we're seeing from like the coastal communities. So it totally can't, like, we're expecting Lone Star tick is invasive. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
They're determined.
They're
coming. And so just because we're hit first doesn't mean that I would bet against Lone Star tick in any way. But also, if anyone travels to any of the states that are known to be Lone Star tick places, like you can get alpha-gal syndrome or get exposed to Lone Star ticks throughout the Southeast United States. And so just because it's a Martha's Vineyard problem in Massachusetts first doesn't mean that there isn't a risk also from other places and other travel.
That was biologist Patrick Roden-Reynolds and epidemiologist Leah Hamner with the Martha's Vineyard Tick Program. A lot of chatter on our YouTube page about this topic. A lot of folks with tick stories, including Mary S., who said she just picked a tick off of her, so yikes. And Van Owen, who notes not only do they hate ticks, but they grew up in Connecticut, not too far from Lyme, Connecticut, which is the place Lyme disease is named for. Stay with us. Just ahead, how the humble emoji became the language of our digital age. We'll talk with one woman who has over 100 emojis to her name, plus GBH's own alpha gal. Gald Tziperman Lotan is back. This is the Curiosity Desk on GBH.
I'm Jared Bowen. Coming up on The Culture Show, Regie Gibson. The Poet Laureate of the Commonwealth joins us as part of our ongoing celebration of National Poetry Month. We talk with the poet, performer, and educator about bringing verse off the page and into public life. Plus, Eartha Kitt's life and legacy take the stage. Jade Wheeler joins us to discuss Who is Eartha Mae, her one-woman play about the singer, actor, and activist. That and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on GBH 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you and the Boston Speaker Series, announcing its upcoming season at Symphony Hall for 7 evenings, featuring Pete Buttigieg, former UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson, historian Doris Kearns Goodwin, and financial journalist Andrew Ross Sorkin. BostonSpeakers.org. And White Flower Farm, offering home gardeners a wide selection of plants, tools, and supplies for the growing season ahead. More at whiteflowerfarm.com.
You're listening to The Curiosity Desk on GBH. I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. We are streaming live at youtube.com/GBH News. And right now, senior producer Aidan Connolly is with me.
Hey,
Aidan,
Edgar.
it's riddle time.
Oh, geez.
Okay, here we go. What has no arms and no shirt and a waist of cold white stone? The beauty of the Louvre, standing silent and alone.
Okay, usually I'm very bad with riddles, but this one feels like the answer is maybe Venus de Milo.
Ding, ding, ding! You
Okay,
got it.
all right.
Nice. Have you been to the Louvre? Have you seen?
Yeah, I went one time. It was sort of the middle of the summer, and it was
Yeah.
sweltering hot. And
Like it is.
I feel like she looked good. She would have looked maybe better with some arms, but
Yeah. She's big, 6'7". She's made of beautiful Parian marble, credited to sculptor Alexandros of Antioch, 2nd century BCE, and she's a prime example of what is known as the Hellenistic S-curve position.
Okay, good. This is all
So,
very
yeah.
interesting, but I
Yeah.
am going to interrupt you because I'm curious why we're talking about Venus de
All
Milo.
right. Yes. Well, okay. So the Venus part, right? Venus makes sense because it is a statue of Venus, the goddess of love. But have you ever wondered about what the Milo part is?
Not once.
That is a reference to the island of Milos, where on this day, April 8th, back in 1820, a Greek farmer was out there kind of plucking some stones from an old wall, which he was going to use on his farm, and he found her in a few pieces. There was a French sailor who was watching this play out. He saw the farmer, noticed that he seemed to have spotted something, so he went over to him, encouraged him to keep digging, and there they found the
So then I
Venus
have a
de Milo.
question.
Yes.
So if Venus is the Roman goddess of love,
That is
right?
correct.
So, but if the statue was found in Greece,
Yes.
why isn't it called Aphrodite de Milo?
I see. Yes, great.
Greek goddess for love?
So, well, the statue pretty quickly made its way to France, and King Louis XVIII, who in turn gave it to the Louvre. By 1821, the next year, it's in the Louvre. So, French, Romance language, Rome, Roman.
All right, well,
there
merci
you go.
beaucoup, Edgar. And that concludes our look at this day in history. Now we're going to turn to this day in news. And for that, of course, we have Gal Tziperman Lotan. You know her as the author of the GBH Daily Newsletter. She has 4 things in the news we need to know about today. Good afternoon, Gal.
Hello, good afternoon. So we're going to start a little closer to home than Greece.
Yes.
We're going to start in Everett.
Much closer to home.
Yes.
Yep.
Former Mayor Carlo De Maria is raising money for a legal defense fund. He says there's a state ethics investigation against him.
Okay, and do we know what they are investigating?
So the State Ethics Commission told GBH's Liz Nislas that they don't comment on investigations.
Okay.
Par for the course. But we might have a sense of what's going on. De Maria was mayor for 6 terms. And during that time, he helped craft this policy that gave him longevity bonuses every time he won re-election.
That's
very clever.
That is pretty clever.
So last year, the state inspector general said De Maria got $180,000 in, quote, improper payments.
Okay.
And the city council asked De Maria to give the money back. He said no. And the city council asked the State Ethics Commission to help.
Okay, so I've got kind of a simple, maybe naive question. He's no longer mayor of Everett.
That's right. Yeah, he ran for re-election again last year and lost. And it's important to know that he's not facing any charges right now.
Right. Okay, so from the former mayor of Everett to the current mayor of Boston, you've got a story coming out of the mayor's office as well.
Yes, correct. So Mayor Michelle Wu went public with her proposed budget for the next fiscal year. It is $4.9 billion. That's 2% higher than it was last year. It doesn't lay off any city workers or tap into the city's reserves.
Okay, so that sounds pretty good.
Yeah. So as you you know, these are tight times for municipal budgets, right? With federal cuts and rising prices. So there will be some cuts to grant programs that previously got money.
Here's the downside.
Yeah.
Yes.
There are going to be some cuts to grant programs that previously got money from federal pandemic relief dollars.
Okay, Gal, what programs are we talking about?
Yeah, Wu said to expect cuts to grants the city gives nonprofits that work with the mayor's Office of Housing and the city's Age Strong Commission. And she also said she hopes to see private donors step up and help fill some of these gaps.
We will certainly be keeping our eyes on this throughout the budget season for sure. All right, we're going to stay in Boston. You got a story this time out of Boston University.
Yes, that's right. So our colleague Magdalena Mata has been covering the story about BU removing pride flags from outward-facing windows on campus.
Sure.
This policy's been in place since 1982, and she's talked to some professors and other experts who said that the policy wasn't really evenly enforced, right? They told her that things like pride flags or Palestinian flags were getting taken down, but things like a Taylor Swift balloon in one case was allowed to stay up for months.
Nobody wants to go after Taylor Swift. Everybody is afraid of her wrath.
Yeah, no comment. So BU President Melissa Gilliam said the university will pause this policy and let at least pride flags, that's all she sort of mentioned in this letter, stay up, at least for now.
Okay, so what does that mean for the people who have had their flags taken down?
So they said it's an encouraging change. Here's what Professor Nathan Phillips told Magdalena.
It opens up a lot of possibility, but we do have a lot of work and a lot of challenging conversations to have about how to change the policy permanently.
Phillips said campus police removed a pride flag from his window multiple times.
All right, Gal, so you got one more story for us?
Yeah, and this one is the furthest out. Comes from outer space.
Yes.
Let's go.
Yeah, we love outer space here on the Curiosity Desk.
Yes. So as you know, the crew of Artemis 2 successfully flew around the far side of the moon earlier this week.
Yeah.
And among all the people watching them from around the world were students and teachers here in Massachusetts.
Hey, nice.
Here's what Mark Mancello told GBH's Diana Dame. He is a senior from Dexter Southfield School in Brookline.
And it's absolutely, truly amazing to just be alive throughout the time where I can see these people who are kind of being slingshotted around the moon in a mission that will, if successful, provide the framework for later exploration.
This is the furthest that humans have ever traveled in space. So he said he was very impressed by that.
And the first time in any of our lives that people have been, near the moon, and more to come. It's cool that it's exciting people, including young people.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, that's Gal Tziperman Lotan. She writes the GBH Daily newsletter. If you want to get the latest from our newsroom right in your inbox every morning, you can join us at gbh.org/daily.
Gal, Aiden, thank you both.
Thank you, Edgar.
Thanks, Edgar.
Stay with us. Just ahead, emojis.
Montgomery, Alabama, has been central to shaping the U.S. as the cradle of the Confederacy and the birthplace of the Civil Rights Movement. Now, some residents say history is repeating itself.
Everything that's going on now, we've already been through. We have been through the hate. We've suffered the hate.
I'm Elsa Chang, The View from Montgomery on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And MIT Sloan Executive Education, offering 2 to 3 day courses and executive certificates for professionals seeking cutting-edge business insights on innovation, cybersecurity, AI, and more. Info at executive.mit.edu. And Blythewald in Bristol, with 80 varieties of daffodils blooming throughout the 33-acre estate. Afternoon tea, Tuesday through Friday. Learn more at blythewald.org.
You are listening to the Curiosity Desk on GBH. I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. We are streaming live at youtube.com/GBH News. Hey, live at the Boston Public Library this Friday. Today's curiosity question, however, is how does an emoji go from a concept to your keyboard. Turns out you don't need a special degree or expertise. Anyone can propose emojis to the Unicode Consortium. We will learn about that. And we've seen an explosion not just in the number of emojis you can use, but also in adoption of this distinctly 21st century, and some might say universal language. With us right now in Studio 3 is Joan Donovan. You know Joan is the founder of the Critical Internet Studies Institute at BU and BU Assistant Professor of Journalism and Emerging Media Studies. She also, as we like to point out, helped co-create the beaver emoji. And also joining via Zoom is Jennifer 8 Lee. Jennifer's a member of the Unicode Emoji Standard and Research Working Group. Ooh, that's a mouthful. She's developed or contributed to more than 100 emojis, including the dumpling, interracial couples, and a whole bunch that you have likely used. I'm very excited for this. Joan, always great to see you. Thanks for being back. Jennifer, welcome to the Curiosity Desk.
Thank you.
All right. Joan, let's start with you because we always include this when we have you here. We mentioned that you were the co-creator of the beaver emoji. Why the beaver? How did this happen? Tell us about this.
This is deep lore. So it came about actually through knowing Jenny, and was at South by Southwest, and we were all having dinner at my friend Amelia's house. And we're all interested in the internet, and Jenny just explained to us that you can apply for an emoji, and there's all these different ways to do it. And then I was like, how would we like sneak in some kind of subcultural lesbian type of thing, and like how to think about it? Because one of the rules or the ground rules, as Jenny explained it to us, was that it has to mean the same thing in other places. So the challenge of a beaver is that it's not indigenous everywhere, and so it doesn't always mean the same thing to the same people. But what's interesting about the application is you really can argue the case. And so I'll share on social media later an article written in Slate about the application for the beaver.
Yes, I'm glad you're saying that because the application itself is well worth reading in its entirety. You have the case that you make is incredible, including one of my favorite parts where you say, we expect the beaver emoji will be used in multiple non-literal ways. And then you list two, Canada and lesbian. Like, that is incredible.
It's a name for a certain unkept part of the anatomy. If you're into natural, be natural, right? And so, but yeah, part of it was, we were all, maybe 2 beers in at that point. And then by the end of the night, it had been somewhat solidified into at least a concept that could eventually take hold. But I will say that Jenny's expertise and her leadership at the Unicode Consortium also was like integral to understanding, how to
what
do
to
this.
do. Yeah, I mean, I will point out, listen, there are plenty of great ideas that came 2 or more beers in. So it takes its place in the pantheon of those. But let's turn to you, Jennifer. I mean, can you talk a little bit about, the sort of your role in the creation of emojis, soup to nuts? Like, what do you do as a member of the Unicode Emoji Standard and Research Working Group?
Yeah, so about 10 years ago, I co-founded Emoji Nation, whose motto is emoji by the people for the people. And it helps try to help ordinary people get their emojis into the set. Because most of the people who are on, or the members of the Unicode Consortium, are large multinational tech companies. So you have Apple, Google, Facebook, Microsoft, Adobe, and you used to have Twitter, alas, who are there having conversations about what emoji should be introduced into the standard set that appears on our phone. And my adventure started many years ago because I discovered there was no dumpling emoji. And I was just like, how could this be? Like, dumplings are a universal food. Like, you have palmini and ravioli and, momos and jiaozhi and, kinkali. Like, basically, every culture has its equivalent of like yummy goodness inside a carbohydrate shell, whether or not baked or steamed or fried. And then like emoji were universal, right? And so the fact that there was no dumpling emoji told me like the system had failed. And I went down this rabbit hole to try to figure out, well, how do emoji come? And then back then you just like Googled, and it wasn't quite obvious at that point. Like, now I think there's some broad awareness that the Unicode Consortium helps create emoji. And along with my friend Ian Liu, we introduced the dumpling emoji and then kind of like piggybacked a bunch of other things like takeout box, fortune cookies, chopsticks, sort of like the Asian, what I call like the Asian food contingent.
Yeah.
And from that, I just was like, well, you develop this expertise because you're, in these meetings with folks. And it's you spend a lot of time debating, emoji. So I started as someone who was like, oh, how can I do this? And then sort of like work my way into becoming a member of the subcommittee back then. Now it's called a working group. And, we basically recruit and think about what kind of emoji should be introduced into the set. So sometimes it's things like interracial couple emoji, and then we help someone with a hijab emoji. So trying to get the emoji set to be more representative, because as of 2015, just to give you a sense, there were many ways to be a man with a job in emoji set. Like you could be a cop, you could be a Buckingham Palace, guard, you could be a detective, you could even be Santa Claus, as a job. Yeah. But if you're a woman, you could only at that time be 4 things. You could be a princess, bride, dancer, or Playboy bunny. That was the way you could be a woman on. And so we just wanted to sort of work to expand. And I think we've had a fun adventure along the way. And one of the things that I really love about Joan is that she always promised me, Jenny, if we did this, it will be the first thing in my bio. And so the fact that you do you always introduce her with the bio? I mean, she has kept, that she's kept her promise.
She's kept the promise. You're listening to the Curiosity Desk on GBH. We're talking about Joan Donovan and Jennifer Aitley about emojis. I want to get into that, the adoption of emojis as language and the spread of this and the universality of it in a second. But really quick, Jennifer or Joan or both of you, can you take me under the hood a little bit? Because I think one of the things about why we have adopted something like emojis or computers or our phones so broadly is because most of the time they just work, but there's oftentimes lots going on under the surface. So what is Unicode, and why does what is it about Unicode that makes this all work?
Yeah, so Unicode was founded almost 30 years ago, I think the math a little bit more than 30 years ago at this point. And it was an industry-driven group to coordinate encoding across many languages. So, there was a certain time when Microsoft encoded Japanese in a different way, but Apple encoded in a different way. And so if you opened up a file, it always looked like gobbledygook. And so a number of engineers came together and said we should just do one uniform encoding system. And so they kind of drove the creation of this industry standard called Unicode. And, in it, it's just one way to sort of describe characters in the Latin alphabet, Cyrillic, Arabic, Chinese, Korean, Japanese, Thai. There's even hieroglyphics in there. And then as part of the standardization process in the period between 2007 and 2010, emojis slipped in, not uncontroversially. I mean, it was actually quite controversial at that time.
Really?
Because until then, Unicode did one thing, which is it took a written languages.
Yep.
And then it found a way to convey them digitally, which is subtle, right? Because there are many letters where if it's in the beginning, the end, or the middle, the letter looks slightly different. Yeah. If that makes sense. So that's true in Arabic. And then what you found here was suddenly we were going to be not just encoding something exists, but sort of allowing something to be conveyed. So suddenly Unicode got into the land of approving, creation. And there were a lot of people who got very mad, and I've heard that some people even quit Unicode as a consortium, as individuals, because of as a protest vote.
Fascinating. You are listening to the Curiosity Desk on GBH. We're talking with Jennifer Aitley and Joan Donovan about emojis. Joan, can you talk about the adoption of emojis and the integration into our language and what that impact has been? If I actually stop and start thinking about it, it's enormous.
Yeah, I think, most people are probably familiar with things like the Emoji Movie and other pop cultural ways in which this has circulated. But if you think back to the days of AOL, we always used to use things like equal sign and then a parentheses to make a happy face or a sad face. Emoticons, right? So they come through this ingenuity that humans have. It wasn't that like the emoticon begins in one place and everybody adopts it. It's something that arises out of the English language keyboard and wanting to express oneself without words. And then, of course, emojis are something that children have really picked up on. And so not only do you have, young people getting on the phone, they might not know how to spell, but they certainly know how to use pictures. And so if you've ever been on the phone with someone under 10,
4-year-old.
you can't avoid emoji talk. Which I love. It's. I think one of the things that's kind of fun and cheeky about it is that there are these subcultural meanings of these things that do kind of get crazy, right? Like like the peach can mean a few things.
Yes,
an
it can.
eggplant can mean a few things.
The beaver can mean a few things, like
the
Canada
means a few things, right? And the way that people have adopted these, though, is to be cutesy or to be friendly or to be funny. Like I very rarely run into an instance where people is like, what they really did is they really upset me with this emoji they sent me, right?
But
people can.
You talk about young people, but one of the things I find interesting about this is I think, there's a pattern of many things, certainly in the digital space, where, it is, oftentimes younger people are the people sort of leading edge who are adopting new things. And then once the older generations pick up on it, it ceases to be cool, and the younger people move on to something else. But with emojis, it does seem like they have been broadly adopted by people of all ages, and yet they haven't lost their usefulness or their cachet. It seems like everybody uses them.
Yeah, and I think, if you have the new Apple phone OS operating system, when you log in and you write a message and you use the word plane, the word starts to blink so that you can replace it with an emoji. Right? And so this is becoming part of our everyday vernacular in ways that I think allows us to express some of our personality and interests. And I love it because when I teach my classes and we're talking about emojis, so if I'm teaching about internet culture, and then I can show them things like a cassette, an old telephone and things. And I can say, who are these for?
Yeah.
Right.
YouTube comment here from A. Roberts, who says, I love the salute emoji. It only recently appeared on my phone and I use it all the time. So this is another thing I find cool about emojis is like it is like they just sort of appear, right? But Jennifer, as you point out, there's a whole bunch of people working in the background to make them appear. And it's not only that it just appears, but you immediately kind of know what it is and can put it into practice right away, which I think is really cool. But Jennifer, I wonder if you could talk to us about like what makes a good emoji. Like what is it? What is the requirement for the consortium to say, yeah, this is a good one, let's add it?
Yeah, so there are multiple criteria. And actually, if anyone looks, there's a whole page on the Unicode Consortium website that explains. So there are a couple things that we look for. So one is it should have multiple meanings. Beaver is actually a good example of that. Like if it's too narrow and too detailed, that probably works in its favor. Then there is some, it should not be transient. Like there is deep regret that we have encoded like CD-ROMs from whatever era that we incur. Pagers, there's a pager emoji.
Do you have a process to take them out of circulation, or once one's been created?
No, an emoji sort of basically, like it would be like killing the capital letter B, because they're encoded in the same way. That being said, you can encode a quote gun emoji, and this happened a couple of years ago, and they swapped it out from something that looked like a metal pistol to like a water pistol, like more fun. So you can, and actually this is very key. There were two big changes happened because of COVID. So the syringe for a long time had blood in it, but But when we used it to mean a vaccine, it was updated in many ways to not have the blood in it. So it was still a syringe, but sort of just the glyph that was commonly used was updated, at least on Apple and other operating systems. And another one was the mask emoji. Way back when, if you dial 10 years ago, it was very sad when the little smiley face was masked. And then when we wanted to encourage people to mask up during COVID, it's a now smiling yellow face with a mask. So, but you can't kill the mask emoji as an underlying concept. It is it's hard coded into a universal system. And the interesting thing is when a glyph is changed out, it doesn't only change the sort of pictorial depiction and communication going forward, it also changed it going backwards. Yeah. Because the way that Unicode characters are conveyed is through a series of bits and bytes, zeros and ones, and as a result, when it pulls up the current incarnation of that image, it's whatever is in the library, the sort of text library.
We got a comment on our YouTube stream mentioning flag emojis, and flag emojis feels like if there is controversial emojis to a certain extent, the flag conversation is the one where it seems like it is. Can you address the sort of was that sort of unexpected, or what? How does that impact your work, Jennifer?
Yes. So in 2022, Unicode basically made a decision to get out of encoding flags for many different reasons. So one, they're actually just as a cluster, not that used individually. There's a reason why they're all the way at the end of the keyboard. Swipe. So that's one. Two, the way that the flag emoji historically were rendered was very dependent on the UN, essentially. If the UN gave you a country code or something the equivalent of, then it could be encoded. But then you ended up in these various strange situations where there were flags that were actually officially recognized, but not under that UN system. So a good example was the Aboriginal flag in Australia, which is an official flag of Australia, I think dating back, mid-90s, 1995-ish. It became an officially recognized flag, but there was no way under that kind of system based on the UN to show that. And that just got very complex. Another one that we constantly saw was Kurdistan, which is not a kind of recognized nation state per the United Nations, but obviously has a flag in a sort of a region and sort of a whole group of people that currently do not have defined borders, but are very much kind of unified in their sense of being a people. And those are just complex. And Unicode is not in the business of deciding, should not and does not want to be in the business of deciding what should be or not legitimate, a legitimate flag. So in 2022, it sort of stepped away.
Yeah. Joan?
Yeah, I think this is also a really important point about what had come up in the news just before the segment around the gay pride flag at BU.
Yeah.
This notion of a flag, right, is also part of meme culture. Memes, people will make up their own flags for places like Kekistan, right? People come up with all kinds of ways of representing themselves and each other. And it does strike at this, is Unicode in production of or also validating these different cues? But ultimately, people do find a way around. Without a flag for Palestine, for instance, people are using the emoji of a watermelon.
Yeah.
When Ukraine was under extreme duress, people were using the yellow flower to symbolize sunflowers, which was something that was to support Ukraine. So people do come up with ways of being cheeky.
That's the beauty of language.
Rules.
We are endlessly creative with language. Well, that is all the time we have. We've been speaking with Joan Donovan, founder of the Critical Internet Studies Institute in BU, assistant professor of journalism and emerging media studies, and of course the co-creator of the beaver emoji, and Jennifer A. Lee from the Unicode Emoji Standard and Research Working Group, and person behind more than 100 different emojis. Thank you both for being with us on the Curiosity Desk.
Very good to be here. Thank you so much.
And now we're joined by the one and only Jared Bowitt. Jared, are you an emoji guy? Do you have a favorite emoji?
I'm very sparing, and the emojis that I use, Edgar, from time to time.
Yes, from time. I like that, and then when you use it, it has power.
Exactly.
What do you got on the show today, Jared?
We're going to start off with the Poet Laureate of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Regie Gibson, who is here for our ongoing celebration of National Poetry Month here across the country. Jade Wheeler is here about her one-woman show, Who is Eartha Mae? Eartha Mae later on became Eartha Kitt, so
Very
this is
cool.
a story that tells her private beginnings, very, very despairing beginnings, and then how she became an international icon. And then Mahesh Daas is here. He's the president of the Boston Architectural College. He joins us every month, and this month he is going to be talking about a film everybody is talking about for good and bad right now, and that's the drama and the place architecture has in that film.
Very, very good. That's Jared Bowen and the Culture Show coming your way in about a minute and a half. They are live at the Boston Public Library, so if you're in the neighborhood, head on over. As for us, that's it for now. The Curiosity Desk is produced by Aidan Connolly, Rachel Armani, Olivia Corcio, Hannah Lawson, Nicole Garcia. Patty Daniels is our favorite emoji. Our engineer is John LaClaw Parker. Special thanks to Andrew Masua, David Goodman, and Angela Morero. We'll be back here in 23 short hours on GBH 89.7, streaming on YouTube. If you can't wait that long, check out our new podcast edition of the show. It's available wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. Stay curious out there.
What's trending? What's interesting? What's going on around town? We're talking all things arts and culture on The Culture Show. Next on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you. And Hammond Castle Museum, presenting Eric Pape Fantasy Illustrations featuring over 100 works by the former Boston-based Golden Age artist, with many pieces unseen for nearly a century. On view April 3rd through 26th. Museum tours available, hammondcastle.org.
Father Brown investigates when a medieval murder is committed at a battle reenactment. Was it a slip of the sword or true combat killing? Find out on an all-new season of Father Brown tonight at 8 on GBH 44.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
Good afternoon with the latest from the GBH Culture Show News Desk. I'm Craig Lamont. A group of Boston Symphony Orchestra patrons are planning to give roses to conductor Andris Nelsons ahead of this evening's performance. They say they want to show solidarity with Nelsons as BSO leadership pushes him out. Last month, the orchestra's CEO and board abruptly announced the conductor would depart after the 2026-27 season over differences in their vision for the BSO's future. George Whiting is a Nelsons supporter. He says the patrons group has gotten more than 2,000 signatures on a petition asking BSO leadership to keep Nelsons aboard.
We need to do something about this. We need to get him to stay. We need to get him reinstated. And so we thought, let's just keep doing this. So for the last couple of weeks, we've stood outside Symphony Hall pretty much before every performance to hand out roses and collect signatures.
Despite the scrutiny brought on by its move, BSO leadership is sticking with its decision to let Nelsons go. The Mass Cultural Council said this week that its so-called Card to Culture program has now provided low-income Massachusetts residents with more than 3 million free or discounted admissions to 600 cultural organizations. The program is open to people with EBT, WIC, or Connector Care cards in the state. And programs include the Boston Ballet, the Wheelock Family Theater, and other organizations, museums, and cultural venues around the state. The 15th annual Arlington Jazz Festival kicks off today and runs through the weekend with a busy
I'm Jared Bowen. Coming up on The Culture Show, the inaugural Poet Laureate of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Regie Gibson. The person people all across the state now call on for moments of celebration, commemoration, and inspiration. He's a poet and performer whose work bridges music, storytelling, and spoken word. Gibson joins us as part of our ongoing celebration. Plus, Eartha Kitt built one of the most singular careers in American entertainment. She was glamorous, provocative, and never easily contained. Jade Wheeler joins us to talk about Who is Eartha Mae, her one-woman play with music about the woman behind the legend. Presented by the Hannover Theatre Repertory, it's now on stage at the Brick Box Theatre in Worcester. Then Boston Architectural College is having its silver screen moment with a supporting role in the new film The Drama. Mahesh Daas, president of the BAC, joins us for his analysis of the dark comedy starring Zendaya and Robert Pattinson that looks at what happens when intimacy and love collide with moral revulsion. That's all right now on The Culture Show.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
I'm Jared Bowen. This is The Culture Show, live on 89.7 from the Boston Public Library and streaming on the GBH News YouTube channel. Regie Gibson has long treated poetry as something meant to be heard as much as read, an art of voice, rhythm, and performance. In Boston and beyond, he's built a body of work that moves between page and stage, bringing poetry into public life with energy, musicality, and wit. A poet, performer, and educator, Gibson is the inaugural Poet Laureate of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. He joins me now as part of our ongoing celebration of National Poetry Month. Regie Gibson, welcome back to The Culture Show. Always great to see you.
You too. Thank you, Jared. Great. Glad to be here.
Well, let me just ask you, I'll make it personal to start out.
Sure.
It's been just about a year that you became our inaugural Poet Laureate of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. How much has and I have seen you in any number of places. I know how much you're being called upon, which is great that people want to bring the arts into public events and education now. But how much has your life changed in the last year?
It's changed a lot as far as how many events, but I was always kind of busy, but also the number of events have grown, the kinds of events, as I was saying before. I could be teaching a college, going into a K through 5 school. Next day I might be working with the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, then doing something at the State House, and then back to talking about poetry and business with a group of individuals in any particular town. So it's a lot, and that's 1 week. So that's a week. So it's a lot to prepare for, and it's a lot to take in, but I welcome it.
Has it changed? You've always been, as I outlined in the introduction, you've always been very performative with poetry and made it part of our oral tradition as well.
Yes.
But has being so public-facing in this last year changed your notions of poetry?
It made me want to publish more books, I think, because people have been asking about things they want to take with them. And so the idea of publishing was something that, I published a book, but it was nothing that I was really, really wanting to do. It was always a connection between myself and an audience, and getting an audience to connect to each other via the spoken word. I've always go back to, when MLK did the I Have a Dream speech, he didn't say, here's the speech, go read it and talk about it. Right? What made that moment was him bringing himself to it, and the force of the spoken word and the poetic tools that he was using to bring folks together. So there's always been a sort of guide for me. What is statesmanship, statespersonship? How does the human voice, human longing, human belief in humanity bring us into being a people instead of just separate sparks? How do we bring each other all together into a flame?
The great part of your job now, too, is that you may be going into rooms or arenas where not everybody would consider themselves a friend of poetry or somebody who grew up with it. So how do you feel the room change when you walk in there versus when you leave and people have just spent time with the verse and your language?
Well, I don't really. And I see sometimes the shoulders relax or the face relaxes, and folks are laughing and they're turning to each other, sort of like, did you just hear that? A way to do that, of course, is with music, with the musicality of the speech, because that's what poetry ultimately is. It's the musicality of speech as well. And Gregory Orr gives us some other parts that we need to look out for, like imagination, structure, and story. And so coming into it with the idea that let's do something musical that has imagination, that tells a story, and also has structure, it seems to be a sort of way of bringing folks into the space to get them hooked. And then there are 5 things I also use, and that would be, how does it engage, get attention? How does it entertain, keep attention? How does it affect, ask someone to feel or do or think? Does it educate? Does someone understand something differently or more than what they did when they came in? And does it elevate, ultimately ask us to be better, bring us to a higher space of humanity? If I can get 3 of those things, I'm good.
I like that you use the word entertain, because some people may think that that's a pejorative when it comes to poetry or some of the arts, but that's not how you see it.
Not at all. This is not juggling, being a clown in that sense. It's about what keeps our attention, what keeps us paying attention and taking us deeper into what the experience is. And to me, that's especially, it's especially needed today, given that there's so many things asking to steal our attention away from each other. So if we can get those pockets where we can actually be wrapped and go into it and deepen ourselves in that moment, we need those so much, so much.
Yeah, how are you thinking about poetry and your role and everybody else's role who is a poet in this National Poetry Month in this particular time?
Well, I've been doing a lot of, and some of my friends will say this, I've been doing a lot of poetry evangelism. And part of my evangelism is to say that what we need to do, especially in the time in which we find ourselves, is to think of ourselves as secular priests attempting to create spaces for sacred citizenship. Right? How do we open up spaces of sacred citizenship where we can have a better space of relating to one another? And how do we use language as a way to do that? And not so much navel gaze, as some of my ilk tends to do, to write poetry of navel gazing and then discuss the quality of the lint. Right? How can we make this something that is bold and American and is talking to us as a people to bring us back into that space that we need to be in so desperately now?
Well, to that end, let's evangelize a little bit, shall we? And
Sure.
I know you've brought two poems with you today. And again, for people just tuning in, I'm speaking with Regie Gibson, who is the inaugural Poet Laureate of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. What is the first piece you have for us today?
Sure. Actually, both of them are excerpts. I was told that I'd have more time than I actually do have, and I should have understood that. And so they're excerpts. The first one is part of a lecture that I give to my students, which is on ethnomusicology and social linguistics. Let's just say that gets the eyes rolling and painting the ceiling. And so this is basically that lecture distilled in 4/4 time, and this is an excerpt from it. So, whether Irish or English or Spanish, Danish or Swedish or Polish, Russian or Turkish, Italian, German or Kurdish, Japanese or Assyrian, Javanese or Armenian, Portuguese, Hungarian, Hebrew, Zulu, Bavarian, no matter what tongue you speak, every language that has a beat, the body instinctively will translate into music. See, what science has found is we are creatures of sound, and our ears need to seek rhythmic patterns in human speech, like the words I'm spitting, hear the rhythm that's in them. Even before you get a hint of any content I'm kicking, you first think nothing of it but the verbal percussion drums inside of you, and then your blood begins rushing, your pulses get to throbbing, your head begins to bobbing. You feeling the effect of what the rhythm has been plotting. It's gotten us to synchronize our alpha waves and realize that rhythm's more than musical, but structurally it underlies each and every atom to plasma scattered on Saturn. Every stage of matter's organized in some kind of pattern, which is architectonic. Everything has a tonic, everything has a cycle, everything has a phonic. Life depends upon it. We're all evolved to want it. This thing that remains, refrains, comes back as chronic. This thing that haunts us all like a ghost in the mind that we've been dancing with, y'all, since the dawn of time.
That was phenomenal, Regie Gibson.
Thank you.
And I should point out for our audience listening at home, you weren't reading anything there. That is in you. And I could see in the movement. I could feel in my own movement. This is in us.
Yes. Since we became recognizable as a species, at least 300,000 years ago, understanding each other around the fire, telling one another stories. Someone begins beating out a rhythm on a log or something. Some voice begins to accompany that, and we begin to bring ourselves closer together in that darkness, though we're surrounded by all kinds of other animals that would like to make us a meal. And we held on to each other, this small primate, holding on to each other on that African savannah in the darkness, making ourselves more human with each word we spoke to each other.
I mean, just invite you to pull your mic a little bit closer to your mouth. But
absolutely.
It makes me wonder about your writing process, because there is such lyricism to it, because we can feel and hear the musicality. Sure. Are you listening to music when you write?
Internally, sometimes I hear a sort of, basically, it depends on the song. It depends on the poem itself. Some of them come out like what you're going to hear today, which are more song-like, more lyrical, and they do begin in a certain space. This one, for instance, was a mixture of me thinking about something that I had read. It was a book called How Animals Made Us Human, and also looking at some of the works on linguistics, as I said, in social linguistics and ethnomusicology, and thinking about what would be a good pulse that would go through that, and beginning to feel. It came first with the let's take it back to the dawn of time, before technology tamed the mind, when a man took his hands and began to clap, and that was the beginning of the boom boom bap. Let's take it back to the dawn of time, before technology tamed our minds, when a woman started humming to an animal's call, and that was the beginning of the yes yes y'all. So this thing about music and language coming together, I had to make the language musical to match what I was feeling as a result of that. And thinking about our ancestors with nothing on that great savannah but voice and drum. Something percussive and something being spoken, took it back to the an elemental, primordial time, and I knew that's where it had to go.
So we're talking about the musicality here, but how visual are you when you're writing?
I go back over my work very often, and I'm going to answer the question I think you're asking, and I go back to try to bring in the five senses in detail, right? And try to see if they're represented, at least if they're not represented in part of a poem, they're represented through a performance. The visual is very, very, very powerful for me. I tend to remember a lot, at least I think I remember a lot of what it is that I see, and much of what it is I hear. And both of those are the things that gave us an evolutionary advantage on those planes, right? The fact that we had this stereoscopic vision and we could stand up and see a bit further and focus, and the fact that we could hear things that were around us, and some animals heard more, some animals didn't hear at all. So, but the visual is something which, as I am getting older and my eyes are letting me know that I'm getting older, the visual is a thing that is really starting to pop for me. And I don't think I would have even thought about it as deeply if I not had been reading some of the works and essays by Stanley Kunitz, who spoke about when he got older, he started to lose his vision, and he began to befriend artists who was teaching him how to use his imagination more visually because his physicality was beginning to fail him. And so I understand that. And Stanley Kunitz, who was a famous poet, and he was a poet and lived from Worcester, as a matter of fact, because of that, I understand the visual as even being more deeply than I did before.
And when you're writing, when you're visualizing, when you're hearing, do you have to be in a certain space? Can you write anywhere?
I cannot write anywhere. I do have to, I tend to as I think it was Wordsworth who said, you have to recollect in tranquility. I tend to need to be at home and go out if I need certain stimulation, and then come back home to write. Even sometimes when I go to musical experiences or poetic experiences, I typically don't even applaud. Sometimes folks think I don't like it, but I love the tension that it gives me and what it does in me. And then I go back home sometimes at 2 o'clock in the morning and begin to create a sort of text, all of the thing I'm feeling, what I'm thinking, all of this stuff. And it makes absolutely no sense to anybody at that time but me. But that's an unorchestrated cry, which begins to happen. And then the next day or 2 days later, I get back to it and I begin to organize it through editing and revision and begin to shape it to see if I can capture whatever that experience was at the time, but to hone it into a tool that can do some work of building.
And by not applauding, you mean you're just taking in. You can't even, but your body is the tension that you can't break because you're consuming.
Absolutely, very tense. And I don't applaud because that's a way of dissipating the energy for me. So I just take it in, it's tense, and I take it home and I begin to write.
What about reading while you're in the writing process? Can you do that?
Absolutely, I can. And I do. And I recommend that everyone does. I read poetry every day. I read something on history every day. And I listen a lot to music every day. And I'm listening to lectures as well, even as I'm walking my dog. And whether it's lectures on cosmology or whether it's lectures on the 1919, what happened post-World War I, whatever it is, I'm always taking this stuff in. And then once it's time to write, it's all gone. But I do have a tendency to put on John Coltrane's A Love Supreme and write through all four of the movements of the Love Supreme. It's a good 28 minutes, right? I recommend that to folks, and you'll reacquaint yourself with some of the best music America has produced.
And in terms of the lectures and that listening, do you just keep listening until an idea strikes? Is it always shaping the ideas?
It's always shaping the idea. Sometimes an idea does strike, and then I have a little notepad and I jot something down. But sometimes I'm thinking, my mind is going through an idea, and I'm waiting to see if maybe there's a snatch of something that I can grab that I just heard that helps me complete my thought on that, or challenges my thought on that, or takes my thought into a different direction. And it very often does happen in places where you would not expect. I myself don't believe in only being informed by poetry and literature, right? Only informed by that. I think it can become very incestuous. And so we need to see ourselves as a river that is being fed by multiple tributaries.
What about what's happening with the Artemis space mission right now? And collectively, we're all looking metaphorically looking up, but in seeing these images, is that working its way through you right now?
You know what? I've seen some of them, and I would imagine it would have to be. I'm one of those folks who I can jot things down, but sometimes the poetry happens after the fact, once all of these things begin to sort of percolate even more so, and once I see how things are going to turn out. But I suspect I'm going to be writing about it. I suspect so.
So Regie Gibson, you've brought another selection for us today. Tell me about piece number 2.
Piece number 2 was actually spawned some years ago, and it was when I wanted to think about what is American music, right? And I thought about that there were 2 major stem cells, I guess, of American music, and the first was blues, which is the culture and tradition that I mostly come out of, and the second was country music. It's one of our existential musics, and it was a time when we were actually asking ourselves, what does it mean to be American? And so out of that, this excerpt came. I was at this one fancy coffee store next to a woman with looks I'd never seen before, but she seemed to have much charm and style and grace. Well, she stepped to the counter and she ordered a drink. It was an iced cappuccino with soy, I think, but I was preoccupied in trying to surmise her race. It seemed she wasn't quite white, she wasn't quite black, she wasn't quite this, and she wasn't quite that. In fact, I guess she wasn't quite anything, I suppose. Now, I didn't want to harass her or come off crass, but the question was burning and I decided to ask, and she said, save your breath, I can guess what you want to know. See, everywhere I go, folks stare at me, trying to decode what I'm supposed to be. But truth is, mister, calculate me ain't so easy even for me. So, since you got the interest, I'll take the time and keep that question from smoking your mind. Just buy my coffee, I'll tell you just what I be. So I said, no sweat, that's a bet. I'm always curious to know what I don't know yet. And for me, that's worth a cup of joe or maybe even 2. So I reached in my pocket, pulled out the money, paid for the coffee, and said, there you go, honey. Now sit down, girl. Tell me, what in the world is you? Well, that's when she took a deep breath. And she said, well, I'm a Jew, Italian, Haitian, Dominican, African-Asian, Mexico-Pean, Puerto Nigeria, Brazilian's what I am. And I'm knit to fit like a patchwork quilt, and from my sweat this country's built, but keep it simple, stupid. Call me American. Now you can just call me American, you can just call me American, though sometimes I'm not quite sure just what that means. Though from sea to shining sea, there are 300 million me's, red, white, and blue, and every in between.
Regie Gibson again with Call Me American. Oh.
Thank you.
When did you write that piece?
I wrote the first part of that piece. It was actually just after, it was years ago, it was after the Twin Towers came down, but it was some years after that. And there was a lot of talk about a mosque being built at Ground Zero. And of course, there was no mosque, and it was not at Ground Zero, but why let the truth get in the way of political posturing? And at that time, and listening to that, it was this idea in the radio sphere of who should be and who should be called an American. And I remember Johnny Cash had written a song. It was called One Piece at a Time, and it's all about an individual who is working in a Cadillac factory, and he cannot afford to buy the Cadillac, and so he steals a Cadillac one piece at a time. And over the years, he puts this together. It starts up. He's driving it down the street, and people are going, dude, what kind of car is that? And he says, well, it's a 51, 52, 53, 54, 55. And that's when it hit. It's like, yes, that's us, right? All of these disparate parts that should not go together, but somehow, as my grandmother would say, it's sure enough ugly, but it stays on the road. And so in thinking about us as being this patchwork of individuals and this variousness that we bring into the space, our polis, and all of us being members of the Commonwealth, being that this is a space convened for us to bring together our various richnesses, our various diversities for one another, that was the moment that the poem concealed.
Regie Gibson, I always love my conversations
not
with
concealed.
you.
It was concealed before, but it congealed at that time.
It congealed. Yes. Well, I love the careening we do, too, because we're talking about Johnny Cash inspiration this time. We'll talk about Shakespeare next time when you're on the show. I look forward to that.
Thank you, Jared. I appreciate this.
As always, Regie Gibson, thank you so much. Regie Gibson is the inaugural Poet Laureate of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. He's a writer, performer, and educator whose work has long brought poetry into public life across Boston and beyond. Coming up, the woman behind the legend. Actor Jade Wheeler joins us to talk about Who is Eartha Mae, her one-woman show about Eartha Kitt. She's next on The Culture Show. Stay with us.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund. proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
Montgomery, Alabama, has been central to shaping the U.S. as the cradle of the Confederacy and the birthplace of the Civil Rights Movement. Now, some residents say history is repeating itself.
Everything that's going on now, we've already been through. We have been through the hate. We've suffered the hate.
I'm Elsa Chang, The View from Montgomery on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And Framingham State University, where the strength of a Commonwealth begins with access to opportunity. At FSU, students examine evidence and serve the public good. Framingham State University. Live to the truth. Learn more at framingham.edu. And My Grandma's of New England. Handcrafted coffee cakes baked locally in Boston, available for delivery for Mother's Day and Memorial Day in varieties including cinnamon walnut and apple cider donut. At mygrandma.com.
And the Boston Speakers Series, announcing its upcoming season at Symphony Hall for 7 evenings featuring Pete Buttigieg, former UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson, financial journalist Andrew Ross Sorkin, and former NASA head Charles Bolden. bostonspeakers.org.
Find that Friday feeling early at GBH Music's Jazz Night, featuring saxophonist Ken Field with his RSE Trio. Tomorrow at 5:30 at the Boston Public Library. Get a free ticket at wgbh.org/events.
I'm Jared Bowen. This is The Culture Show live on 89.7 from the Boston Public Library and streaming on the GBH News YouTube channel. Eartha Kitt was in a class of stardom, personality, and performance all her own. She was a singer, actor, cabaret star, sex symbol, and political truth-teller, all wrapped in an unmistakable voice and feline poise. But behind the glamour was Eartha Mae, a girl from South Carolina who rose from poverty and rejection to become an international icon, as we're reminded here.
C'est si bon de partir n'importe où, bras dessus, bras dessous, en chantant des chansons.
In Who is Eartha Mae, actor Jade Wheeler goes past the public image to explore the woman underneath it all. Wheeler created and performs the one-woman play with music, using story and song to trace Kitt's life from childhood through fame, exile, and reinvention. Who is Eartha Mae is presented by the Hannover Theatre Repertory on stage through April 19th at the Brickbox Theatre at the Jean McDonough Arts Center in Worcester. Jade Wheeler is an award-winning actor and voiceover artist. Welcome to The Culture Show. It's great to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Congratulations on the show, which you are returning to our region after quite a bit of time living in Belgium.
Yes.
Nice to have you back.
Thank you.
Well, tell me about your own personal interest in Eartha Kitt and how you found your way to Eartha Mae.
Thanks for the question. The short version is my mom. My mom sort of put the seed in my head. I didn't really know anything about her, and my mom listened to her music and knew her story and her backstory. And then a choreographer friend of mine also mentioned her and said, "Oh, there's something about you. It matches." I'm like, "Well, I don't know what you're saying." And then another friend of mine mentioned her as well. And I said, "Okay, this is now 3 different people telling me I should do something." And I read Thursday's Child, and I was just so touched by her story. And
That's
I said,
her autobiography.
That's the autobiography. Yes, thank you. And I said, "There's something to excavate here, and let's see what we can do."
Well, her story is so fascinating for what the story is, but also how she saw it and how she used it.
Yeah.
Talk about the transformation that, I guess we can start with her childhood and the circumstances under which she was raised.
Yeah, absolutely. She often said in her interviews that she was given away time and time again, passed from her mom to a neighbor to someone else to an aunt, and constantly rejected, dejected. And she really just had this survival instinct, and she just kept going, and eventually I think thanks to teachers, other people seeing her circumstances, between them and herself, pulling herself up and eventually creating this sort of amazing persona that she herself said she could be Eartha Kitt, and Eartha Mae was safe within her.
It was fascinating to see how she talked about Eartha Kitt, and that while she was rejected in childhood, she became accepted, and almost in such a way it was the public who became her parent in some situation. How did she see herself? How did she feel this, which is so interesting, to feel the safety on stage and before an audience when many people would feel so vulnerable?
Well, I think that's part of it. I think from the vulnerability, she allowed herself to be and to sing and to dance and to exercise whatever those demons were. In this, it was a safe space, when the lights go out and it's just you don't realize there's the audience until you have that applause. And it seemed, again, from her own words, that she needed the applause. It was almost like she needed it. I don't know how else to say it. And she literally said she was an orphan until an audience adopted her. It was this sort of, when a child needs a hug or needs mama, 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 and it's not until mom looks at you, okay, now I'm seen. And that's all she needed. So for her, that was her sort of crying out, mama, papa, and the audience saying, yeah, we see you. We're here with you. And even as a child, I think her love of reading, her teachers seeing, again, sort of how she was. And then when she went to read in class, she said the longer that she was allowed to read, the more that it was, people want to listen to me? People want to watch me? And so I think even from that young age, she didn't yet have the vocabulary for it, but she understood, I like this. I like attention. I like you're hanging on to my every word.
I mean, I have come to believe that the people who are really supposed to be on stage, like the Eartha Kitts of the world, end up being on stage because there's just something in there and how they see the world and how they are able to leverage that talent. If you agree with that, how do you see that in the person, the epic star that Eartha Kitt became?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think in addition, she was just so curious. She was so othered, literally from day one. And even like the amazing poet before said, because for her, she was just, I am me. And you're telling me I don't fit and I don't fit there. Where do I belong? And so, rather than saying I don't belong anywhere and just going off into a corner, she said, well, I guess I'll just, be here and continue to make my way. She didn't try to insert herself anywhere. She just stayed exactly who she was until eventually, I think leaving America especially did in some way allow her to see, other places aren't so, black-white, for lack of a better term, as here. And that's where she realized, I don't have to be one or the other. I can just be me. And that's where she really started to even differentiate herself. That's Eartha Kitt. Here's Eartha Mae in her garden, in her big knit sweater and reading. I mean, she was just so intelligent and so private, just an amazing human being and so misunderstood. And despite all that, she continued. She said, I don't care if you don't understand me. I understand me, and I can't help you.
And she knew that people would continue to follow her, which they did.
They did.
I'm speaking with Jade Wheeler, who created and stars in Who is Eartha Mae, presented by the Hannover Theatre Repertory, and it's on stage through April 19th at the Brick Box Theatre at the Jean McDonough Art Center in Worcester. How do you construct this show so that we're meeting both Earthas?
So this started as a 10-minute piece. It's now about 75 minutes. What has remained the kernel throughout all of that was really just the importance of giving us the taste of who we're expecting, but then pulling back and letting the audience understand that's not who I really am, and just sort of playing with that duality. we're in an intimate space. We're seeing and hearing Eartha Kitt, but then we're also hearing and seeing Eartha Mae. And there's this, I think, pretty interesting back and forth and hiding in plain sight, as she said a lot of times. If something got too close or too personal, that's, I'm not sure if you've ever seen her in an interview, but maybe that's where she starts to crawl over someone or starts to flirt with someone. And that's Eartha Kitt coming out until Eartha Mae feels comfortable again to tell her truth and her piece as she wants to and as she feels comfortable to.
Well, I want to ask you more about who Eartha Kitt is as a performer and how you find your way to it. But here's a little bit. Let's listen to a little bit of Eartha Kitt. Great. This is her famous rendition of the Cole Porter song, Let's Do It, recorded in 1950. Describing her crawling over people in interviews. You had the gestures, you had the Eartha Kittness, you had the feline presence in there. We just heard her voice. We know how, now I'm doing it too, we know how statuesque she could be and how she used her body. How do you describe who she was as a performer in each of those regards?
She did have a dance background. She danced as a kid in Spanish Harlem. She was dancing in Cuban clubs. She trained with the Dunham Dance Troupe. So she was trained technically. And then I think within all of that, just her own body, especially as she started in the cabaret circuit in Paris specifically, I think she just had this fantastic awareness of herself, her back body, her posture, like you said. And she was very athletic as well. She did yoga. She was very strong. She knew how to use her body. I'm not sure if anyone has ever seen her on TV or in old movies. There's this one show that I forget right now where she sort of takes herself through the guy's bookcase. She just sort of climbs through it and wiggles back down. She just had this feline ability, and it was two things, right? She had that knack, I think, naturally, but then of course, like anything, if other people point to that and say, hey, what's this, then sometimes you go even more into it, and or you'll she knew it was expected of her as well after some point. And she said, okay, I'll play with this because it's Eartha Kitt playing with it. And so it felt comfortable to do it versus herself, who, maybe might not have done that unless she was around those very close people.
What is it for you to take on the character? Because I know it's always a balance. You don't want to go into a show like this having people think that it's an impersonation, because it's not. This is a narrative piece. This is taking people into her story, but at the same time, you're evoking her.
Absolutely. I mean, I like to say that this is an excavation, not an impersonation, and it's more. I prefer to say that we're really using her and her story and the who and how she was as someone to just completely triumph and overcome. That is the story, because I think a lot of us, we need a hero. We maybe ourselves feel rejected or don't really know where and how we fit in. And I think this is a fantastic person who showed us, I can survive, I can overcome, I can be exactly me in the moment, however I want to be. And I'm allowed to change. Who says I have to be one thing? She famously said, I don't want to fit into anyone else. You have to fit into me. She said, allow people to just be who they are. Lieben und leben lassen. She was a huge advocate for gay rights, for multiculturalism, internationalism, mixed marriage. She traveled a lot. She loved languages. She was just so curious. She was just so human and wanted for others to also be human and say, let's just accept each other.
So you mentioned a little bit ago that she ultimately moved outside the country, in part because she had this really horrible experience at the White House in 1968, where she was bold enough, brazen enough in the White House to condemned the Vietnam War and the administration's handling of it. And for that, I mean, she was very much blacklisted.
Absolutely.
How did she, given everything you just described in her constitution, how did she survive that moment?
She took a beat. She said, "Don't panic. What am I going to do? You know what? I'm going to go back to these other places and these other countries who still love me, who still accept me. I'm not going to let this ruin me," because it could have, right? You know, financially, morally, emotionally. And she really picked herself up and said, off I go. If I can't make it here, because she was literally, contracts were being canceled. People said, no, we won't invite you on anymore. And she said, okay, off I go then. And she did that until 1978, essentially. I think she had come back a couple times in the mid-70s before that. But essentially, she was blacklisted for about 10 years. You know, and then since then, she was very candid about what happened to her and her story. And she used that as well as part of her cabaret act later on. And in a lot of the interviews later on, up until her passing.
As you've done this deep dive and you've played her and thought about her so much, to what extent has she informed your own artistry, your own career, your own beliefs and actions?
Oh gosh, I think seeing how brave she was to not shy away from truly what she did believe, I think that also helped me. I would never say that I'm an activist in the same way that maybe she was, and maybe I just don't realize that I am. You know, sometimes just in the doing it, you are, whether or not you chose to put on that hat. But I think as someone who's also pretty curious, loving languages, I allow her style to influence me. And again, like you said, we did this 8 years ago, and this is my first time performing in the States since then. So it's just a dream come true to be back. Older, a little wiser.
Have you thought about her differently in the intervening 8 years? Do you understand her a little bit differently?
I think I do. Some of the things that she said, being a mother now as well, you know, the things that you'll do for your kids, or to say, I don't have a choice. You know, we have to survive one way or the other. Absolutely. And also the sort of things that you want to instill in your kids. I think that definitely resonates. And even just some of her words, I understand them on a different level now than I did. Yeah.
Well, it's also fascinating to go back and read her, as I did in the research, her old interviews. She was, if only I had the chance to interview her while she was alive.
Yeah.
What an extraordinary thinker. Jade Wheeler, thank you so much for being here. Congratulations on the show.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Jade Wheeler created and stars in Who is Eartha Mae, presented by the Hannover Theatre Repertory and on stage through April 19th at the Brick Box Theatre at the Jean McDonough Arts Center in Worcester. Again, thank you. Coming up, Mahesh Daas, president of Boston Architectural College, on the controversial new film The Drama, which was partly filmed at BAC. He's next on The Culture Show. Stay with us.
Hungary is electing a new prime minister next week. Incumbent strongman Viktor Orban is trailing the opposition in polls, so U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance is there to help out.
This is a historical point of turning the country back to a democracy or dictatorship and eventually leaving the EU.
Hear that story next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Bryant University, ranked 5th in the nation for internships and recruiter demand by LinkedIn's 2025 Top Colleagues list. Committed to preparing students to be day one ready for success. Learn more at bryant.edu. And the Boston Philharmonic Orchestra. Benjamin Zander conducts Mahler's Third Symphony with mezzo-soprano Dame Sarah Connolly on Saturday, April 11th at 8. Ticket information and more at bostonphil.org.
And Hammond Castle Museum presenting Eric Pape Fantasy Illustrations featuring over 100 works by the former Boston-based Golden Age artist with many pieces unseen for nearly a century. On view April 3rd through 26th. Museum tours available, hammondcastle.org.
Wherever you are, you can stream GBH 89.7 on the GBH News app. From your kitchen to your commute, stay connected with expert interviews and trusted local news. Download the GBH News app today on the App Store or Google Play.
I'm Jared Bowen. This is The Culture Show live on 89.7 from the Boston Public Library and streaming on the GBH News YouTube channel. It's time for AI Actual Intelligence, where we tap into the most interesting thinkers in our region for their algorithm-free insights. Joining us as he does every month is Mahesh Daas, president of Boston Architectural College and the co-author of the graphic novella about AI titled I Knowbot. This month, we're focusing on the new film, The Drama, starring Zendaya and Robert Pattinson as a newly engaged Boston couple. The Boston Architectural College building, just a few blocks away from us here on Newbury Street, a notable example of brutalist architecture, has a supporting role in the film. Mahesh Daas, welcome back to The Culture Show. It's great to have you here.
Thank you, Jared. It's great to talk about this topic.
Well, yeah, this will be interesting. So normally we talk about architecture, and we will, but you've also taught film studies. So we will go into this film, which is generating a lot of conversation. You have seen it. I just saw it yesterday, so it's still top of mind. Before we do that, here's a moment from the much talked about trailer for The Drama, again, starring Robert Pattinson and Zendaya.
All right, so before we got married, we did this thing where we said the worst thing we've ever done.
Okay. I'll tell mine if we all do it. Promise?
What did you do?
This dog.
Beer bottles and porn.
You left an Arab night.
Yeah.
What's the worst thing I've ever done?
Okay, Are you serious?
I'm sorry.
I'm gonna order an Uber.
Emma, what the
Am I sensing some nerves? Remember, you know each other really well.
So let's try to encapsulate this. Obviously, the admission by one of the characters about what they did that was so horrible was omitted from the film, from the trailer. You find out in the film. I knew none of the controversy when I went into this. I try to always keep everything at bay until I've seen it and then digest everything so I can form and have my own opinions about it. Because of the admission that is omitted in this trailer, it has generated a pretty substantial amount of controversy. But before I say any more, and I probably won't say too much more because I don't want to spoil it for anybody, just as it wasn't spoiled for me, what are your overall impressions of the film?
Yeah, Jared, I think it's you cannot really describe this film in any simple way. So it's a difficult film, without a doubt. And it is a film that does defy your expectations. It surprises you, challenges you. It's a difficult experience for some, if not most. And it misdirects you quite intentionally and deliberately, and cinematically, if I may add. So I think it's an experience, is all I would say. There's another film that we can call it as an experience as opposed to just a genre film, a rom-com or thriller, psychological horror. You can describe, in a number of things, but it's none of those and all of those at once. It is a strange admixture of these things.
So for that reason, this is not a film where you ask if you like it, because it is a very difficult film. It is very uncomfortable, and great art makes you feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Would you give it a high rating?
Yes, I think I would, because it is a very intelligent film, without a doubt. It is difficult to, as you peel this onion, I think you begin to see more layers to it. And if one is familiar with Borgley's whole work.
This is the writer-director.
Christopher Borgley, and he has in earlier films, this is analogous to some films he made earlier, including a short film called Softcore, which is about the launch of a particular band, and it's about the music taste, but it is also about a couple being very awkward, and there is a certain secret or something withheld, and it doesn't want to be disclosed. So I think the notion of disclosure, the notion of relationship, awkwardness, and going beyond the simple reductions of who we think we are, how we portray ourselves, how we are seeing each other, all of that is blown away.
So what I will say is that, as I mentioned, this is a young Boston couple who is about to be married, and one of the couple has to reconcile what he now learns about his soon-to-be wife. And can you move beyond that? Can you come to understand something really, really bad about somebody you love, and how does that change things? I thought it was very interesting that I was watching the film only yesterday at a moment where this country was threatening to destroy a civilization by 8 o'clock last night, and you asked the same question: how do you love a country that you have come to know when it can do something and speak in such a horrific way? And so for that reason, I thought it was an extraordinary reflection of society. And I think because of some of the subject matter, because of the marketing of this film, which was about a romantic comedy from what I take it, which is definitely not a romantic comedy, people were taken aback. But I think if you look at it through the lens that we're talking about, it becomes an altogether different film. Also really fascinating to talk about, which is partly why you've come to us with this, and because of your own connection with some of it being shot at your college, the Boston Architectural College. What is the place of architecture in this film feeding into the psychology of the film?
I think I'll just mention about Thanksgiving time around the fall of 2024 was when Christopher Bartley's team approached us, and they wanted to see and use the premises. Of course, they wouldn't reveal anything about the film other than that Zendaya and Robert Pattinson are in it. And they thought this was quite an extraordinarily suitable location for what they're trying to do. So that was the primary thing. And obviously we've been waiting, and we didn't know anything about the film either.
So I was wondering about that. You don't know when you sign off on something like this, you don't know what the content is.
Nope, nothing, not zilch. And the only thing I would mention is Tom Holland was there. And he was hanging out with our students, so that was very cool. He had nothing else to do, perhaps, on the set. But
for people not reading People magazine, he's Zendaya's partner, so he was in town with her.
Yeah, and so it was interesting. But I think when the film came out, I finally understood why the BAC setting was so important to the film, because it is a brutalist building, and that means it is exposed concrete. There is no veneer to that building, and it serves as, so they filmed it in the library of our building, which is at the top floor, 6th floor. And it is, in fact, what's interesting about the whole film is all the scenes, or most of the scenes, 90% of the scenes unfold in the interiors. And each interior, the architectural setting, the mood, atmosphere, are central to portraying what the director is trying to craft there. So in that sense, everything is interior except maybe for 1 or 2 scenes which are on the street.
But those are virtually interior too. I noticed that they're tight shots. You don't get an expansive view. You
never get an expansive view except for the workplace of Emma, played by Zendaya. So the workplace is the Boston Architectural College Library, which serves as a bookstore. And then there is one shot of Boston through the window. That is the only place where you see Boston as a backdrop, quite intentionally, but it is a fleeting moment. So I thought that was interesting revelation there too. The veneer, the lack of veneer, and the brutal honesty, radical honesty of the building. And the moment of the radical honesty when the secret is disclosed, there is some kind of there's synergy between them. I think they riff off of each other. So I finally understood why that was the case.
Let's move to another location, not affiliated with your school, but their apartment, which I understand to be a Back Bay apartment, and modern furnishings and a spiral staircase in the middle of this apartment, which you're always, the framing is such that so much of the time they're in this apartment, you're aware of this very hulking spiral staircase there.
Absolutely. It's the interesting thing is that there are several shots with a spiral stair to your left, and it is always like a stage set, a proscenium of sorts. And the spiral stair struck me. I mean, I didn't pick it up in the first time it appeared, but then it repeated, and I said, oh, there is something to it. And sure enough, there is the spiraling out of things in the narrative that is constantly hinted at or symbolized by that spiral. And that is the kind of power of, I think, architecture to be able to frame more subliminally. But also in this film, it serves quite a bit as a device, as a character itself. How things spiral and how that floor, you can go up or down, and that changes the world. It completely changes the relationship and the whole network, and how fragile the whole thing is, and how everything is shattered and fragmented by a disclosure as opposed to enclosure. Mm-hmm. So there is a play. I think that's why I say architecture does play a psychological role in not just setting the scene, but actually playing a role in that.
I'm speaking with Mahesh Daas, president of Boston Architectural College, who joins us every month to talk about architecture in its many forms. The final bit of architecture I noticed all took place at the Addison Gallery of American Art, one of my beloved museums here. It, like your gallery, is always free, so if people want to go visit and check out where it was happened, they can do that in Andover. And at the Addison Gallery, in addition to many other scenes, the characters are surrounded by books and images of art, whether it's on the desk, on the walls, or on the bookshelves lining them. And I began to realize that the books and thought and intellect and creativity are always surrounding them, and almost at the end you realize smothering them. They can't rise out of this.
Yeah, what's interesting is that they are surrounded by works that whose purpose is to, in fact, deepen our understanding of each other, the world, the universe, and the meaning of everything. And yet the characters struggle to figure it out. And that, I think, goes to the existential dimension of it. I thought that is why this film doesn't have a singular reading per se, and there is struggle between the characters, but also the audience. We are as torn apart by what's happening there, and our loyalties also shift. We are also deeply affected by what is happening, so we are wrapped up into that. In that sense, I think the setting, be it the bookstore, be it the museum, be it the apartment, which is filled with works of art. I mean, we can talk more about that perhaps, but the works, they themselves support a lot of it. There's a lot of deep messaging and layering in there. But I think that is the veneer, in a way, that also falls apart when it comes to certain existential struggles and trying to understand, once your expectations are shattered, how do you relate? And that is where it spirals out. And so I thought it was quite poignant.
How do you think this film will go down? I spent a lot of time thinking about this. We just, on our Wednesday watch party, just talked about Taxi Driver, and I was thinking about how difficult that must have been to experience that 50 years ago, because it's very, very difficult to watch it today. Yeah. But you understand the complete thread from 1926 right through to 2026, and I thought, after watching this yesterday, this is a film that people will be looking at as a demarcation of this time.
Absolutely. I think in that sense it is certainly going to, I mean, obviously everyone is talking about it for a variety of reasons, and it is powerful in the craft of it. Just simply how the movie is made, you can see the editing, how it goes, it fragments time, it introduces dream sequences into it, it evokes deep emotions, all of those. For all those reasons themselves, subject matter aside, I think it is a powerful film. And so it is going to be talked about for a very long time to come, as I reckon.
Well, Mahesh Daas, I like this departure that we've had talking about architecture and film, and we did not talk before this. I didn't know if we were going to be aligned or not, especially with how controversial this film is. Thank you so much for being here. Great to see you as always.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Mahesh Daas is president of Boston Architectural College and the co-author of the graphic novella about AI titled I Knowbot. He joins us every month. Thank you for listening to another edition of The Culture Show. Tune in tomorrow when we'll take stock of the Artemis II moon mission with friend of The Culture Show, Katie Coleman. She's a retired NASA astronaut, one-time space space dweller and U.S. Air Force colonel. Thanks to Henry Santoro for curating our culture cast. Today's engineer is Dave Goodman. The BPL technical and logistics crew is Maddie Geyer, Bill Francis, Sandra Lopez-Burke, Juan Jose Cadena, Chris Hanks, and Pat Lally. I should also thank Craig Lamolt. Thanks to the Newsfeed Cafe, everyone who came down here today to be with us. We love seeing you. I'm Jared Bowen. Have a great day.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
Spend your afternoon with us. Stay with us for GBH's All Things Considered at 4 and Marketplace at 6:30. But first,